Chapter 1618. Ling Han similarly flicked a finger, and a flash of sword light surged out, instantly erasing Zhong Badu's attack. Zhong Badu couldn't help but look surprised. Though it was just a casual strike, the might of a saint was the strongest in the world. So how could it not kill a mere eternal river tear? But the truth was so strange. Ling Han actually dispersed his attack. How was this possible? Interesting, Zhong Badu said coldly. Though he was very surprised, a saint naturally had the bearing of a saint, and was not the slightest bit flustered. It is impolite to reciprocate, take a strike from me as well. Ling Han used his fingers like a sword, and struck out at Zhong Badu. Zhong Badu cut his palm in front of him, and pung! The two of them exchanged another strike. They did not attack again, and only exchanged blows. Through these two exchanges, Zhong Badu was already sure that Ling Han had saint-level battle prowess. This made him very confused, because no matter how freakish you were, if you did not reach the level of regulations, no matter how powerful you were, it was all for nothing. But possessing saint-level battle prowess and being able to match him were two completely different things. Zhong Badu had absolute confidence that Ling Han definitely could not be a match for him, but that was not something he could suppress in 2 or 3 moves. If they fought, the Long tribe could be completely destroyed. Though he was arrogant, he was not arrogant to the extent that he dared to do as he pleased in the residence of a medium saint. So he did not attack again. How interesting. He changed his line. I am very curious. You are clearly only at the Eternal River tier. So how can you have such powerful strength? Ling Han said, Where is the open cloud's forbidden land? I will go visit when I have time. Did you eat some sort of heavenly treasure? Zhong Badu asked again. I do not like you. So I plan to ruin this marriage for you, Ling Han said. Neither of them answered the question, and it was completely meaningless. Zhong Badu pondered and said, You must have great secrets on you, and I will find them all. Ling Han smiled. If you are not afraid of death, come at me. How can I kill you? Ha 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 ha. Zhong Badu laughed loudly. I have never seen an eternal river tear like you. So you indeed have the right to be arrogant. For the sake of the Long family, I will let you be arrogant for a while longer. Same to you, same to you. Ling Han turned around and left. Since he already knew that the open cloud's forbidden land was the open cloud's king's old nest, then he knew where he should go to find the open cloud's king in the future. Zhong Badu looked at Ling Han's back, his eyes slightly narrowing, revealing killing intent. But in the end, he did not make a move. As he had said, this was the Long family. He had no confidence in taking down Ling Han without destroying the Long family. When Ling Han went out, Jing Yi and Yang Zige both revealed proud expressions. They didn't know what happened in the courtyard, but in their opinion, since the young master had made a move, Ling Han naturally had no choice but to obey. Get lost. Don't be an eyesore, Yang Zige mocked. He had been punched by Ling Han, so he naturally hated Ling Han. Pung! Ling Han casually threw a punch at Yang Zige's face. The force of his punch was so great that it sent Yang Zige flying. Pung! The main door was knocked open, and Yang Zige fell heavily onto the ground. He rolled a few times, and only stopped when he crashed into a stone pillar. He was angry, embarrassed, and shocked. Ling Han actually dared to make a move, and he had once again made a fool of himself in front of the young master. This caused his face to flush red, and he wanted nothing more than to rush up and strangle Ling Han to death. You're dead! He crawled to his feet, raised his head and roared. He dared to make a move in front of the young master. And why was there no movement? Yang Zige couldn't help but turn to look at Zhong Badu. In his impression, Zhong Badu was someone who was extremely protective of his own people. It had always been him who bullied others, and he would not tolerate others behaving atrociously over his head at all. But now he was actually just glaring at Ling Han. What was going on? This was awkward. Ling Han smiled faintly, turned around and walked away. He stretched out his hand, waved and swaggered off. Young master, he's too arrogant, you can't. Pa! Yang Zige hurriedly complained to Zhong Badu. But unexpectedly, before he could finish speaking, he was slapped across the face by Zhong Badu, causing him to be completely stunned. Scram! Zhong Badu spat out. What an idiot! Did he not know how to show respect? Jingyi, on the other hand, was shocked. She had never seen Zhong Badu lose his composure like this. What ability did that young man have that he could actually force Zhong Badu to vent his anger on his own subordinate? Ling Han returned to his own courtyard and propped his head up as he thought. Since Zhong Badu was really a descendant of the Open Cloud's king, then no matter what, he had to ruin this marriage. The problem was, how was he going to ruin it? The patriarch of the Long family had not gone to Wood Figure Planet, so it was very likely that he had not heard of his name. Then, his reputation would not be very useful. And Zhong Badu's behavior. The Open Cloud's forbidden land seemed to be very closed off, and similarly did not know his identity, causing his illustrious reputation to actually be of no use. Let's see how Long Xiangyue is doing first. Ling Han decided to sit and wait first. After all, he could only rely on his glorious battle achievements to scare people now. His true strength was only that of a small saint. If he could not scare people, then a medium saint would be able to kill him. Not 2 days had passed, and Long Yushan suddenly ran over. "You really killed 2 Saint Kings?" she asked in disbelief. Ling Han smiled and said, "That's right. You can ask around anywhere you want. I am not exaggerating in the slightest." Long Yushan stared at Ling Han, yet could not believe it no matter what. No matter what, this was only an eternal river tear. But how could Long Xiangyue possibly lie to her about this? She suddenly made a move and grabbed out at Ling Han. Ling Han casually counterattacked. The killing formations in his body activated and burst forth with the battle prowess of a small saint. Furthermore, it was at the peak level and easily blocked Long Yushan's attack. He did not follow up with another attack while he had the upper hand, because Long Yushan was only testing his strength. Long Yushan couldn't help but be stunned. Previously, Ling Han definitely had not used any kind of precious tool, but the power that he had burst forth with was enough to match her. From this point, if he still had some trump card and used it, then perhaps killing a Saint King would really not be a fantasy. She paused for a moment and then said, "Do one thing for me, and I will gift the dragon horn to you." Ling Han smiled slightly and asked, "Tell me, what is it?" "I want you to think of a way to reject the marriage with the Zhong clan for me," Long Yushan said. This was really interesting. In the first place, he had the intention of ruining this marriage, but had not thought that Long Yushan would actually use it as a condition, which was equivalent to giving him a true dragon horn for free. He said, "To marry or not to marry, the choice is yours. You just have to directly refuse." "No." Long Yushan shook her head. "The Zhong clan has a Saint King. If you directly refuse the marriage, it will definitely enrage the Saint King, and the Long clan will suffer a calamity of destruction. Thus, this matter must be done by you. She wants me to be the sucker." Chapter 1620. Patriarch, have you calmed down a little? Can we talk properly now? Ling Han said with a smile. The Long family patriarch's face darkened. "No wonder you dare to cause trouble without reason. You're actually so strong. However, this is the Long family, and there are 2 saints in charge. So what if you're strong?" "Sigh, you're being unreasonable," Ling Han said. I'm proposing marriage to your family, but you're shouting about killing me. Is this the way to treat a guest?" The Long family patriarch couldn't help but explode in anger. The key was that your request was too excessive. You wanted to break up the marriage with the Saint King. Wasn't that putting the Long family on a bonfire? He released his dragon's might, intending to launch a powerful counterattack. Ling Han pretended not to notice. His right hand grabbed onto the other party's dragon claw, as if it was just a small fellow. In front of Ling Han, the Long family patriarch was really no different from a child. No matter how much he released his dragon's might to suppress him, no matter how much he boiled his dragon blood to increase his battle prowess. So what? The Long family patriarch struggled with all his might, but he was already sweating profusely. However, Ling Han seemed to have fallen asleep and was indescribably relaxed. The Long family patriarch was shocked. Just how great was the difference in strength between the 2 of them? He gritted his teeth and suddenly took out a divine sword from his spatial spirit tool. The body of the sword was actually made from a piece of white bone. There were many divine patterns on it, and it was already emitting light. This was the spine of an ancestor of the Long family. He had extracted it himself before he passed away, and refined it into a divine weapon. Divine Weapon 1. The Dragon Bone Sword was activated. This was the Long tribe, and the patriarch of the Long tribe had a special boost, so this saint tool was instantly unleashed to its maximum effect. A crimson true dragon leaped out from the blade of the sword, and pounced towards Ling Han. Ling Han's eyes widened slightly. This was getting a little interesting. He reached out to grab the true dragon, and the killing formation in his body activated. Countless formation patterns were densely packed, and finally, they fused into a sword and slashed towards the true dragon. A strange thing happened. That true dragon actually swung its tail, and disappeared into the dragon bone sword with a whoosh. It was scared away. The Long family's patriarch was dumbfounded. The dragon bone sword was actually afraid of Ling Han. Because the Long family's ancestor had extracted his own bones to refine this sword, the weapon spirit was actually a wisp of the Long family's ancestor's soul. However, it had long lost its consciousness, and only had the instinct to protect the Long family. However, as long as it became an artifact spirit, it would have a basic characteristic, and that was that it would tend to protect itself. Only when it was intact could it accomplish its goal of protecting itself. Thus, unless it was absolutely necessary, this kind of treasure definitely wouldn't fight to the death. Just how fucking strong are you to be able to make a fully awakened saint weapon fear you? Ling Han smiled and said, Lord Patriarch, can we have a good talk now? Let's talk. The Long family's patriarch only felt a buzzing sound in his head. It was a mess. The conversation between the two of them was naturally meaningless. The Long family's patriarch had no idea what he was talking about, and Ling Han didn't care either. In any case, he was here to cause trouble. After talking for a while, Ling Han swaggered off, and with Long Yushan adding fuel to the fire, a rumor spread everywhere in the Long family. Ling Han had stolen his beloved, and proposed to the Long family that he would take Long Yushan as his wife, and the dowry was astonishingly generous. Not long after, this news reached Zhong Badu's ears. Pa! He smashed the stone table in front of him into pieces with a single palm strike, and suddenly stood up, killing intent boiling in his eyes. Previously, he hadn't killed Ling Han completely because he didn't want to offend the Long family's ancestor. But this brat actually wanted more, and actually dared to have designs on his woman. Intolerable. Young master. Jing Yi and Yang Zijie both took a step forward. Zhong Badu suppressed his fury, and placed his hands behind his back. This was only a rumor, and the Long family probably wouldn't dare to break off the engagement. That would enrage a Saint King. And who in the world could withstand the fury of a Saint King? That person was just an ugly person making trouble. There was no need to pay attention to him. When he left the Long family, he would kill him, and let him know the severe consequences of angering him. However, the matter wasn't as Zhong Badu thought, and it wasn't just an ugly person making trouble. It was said that Long Yushan's attitude was ambiguous, and there was even news that she wanted to invite the Long family's ancestor, who was in seclusion, out to re-examine this engagement. This caused Zhong Badu to be unable to sit still. What was going on? Did they really dare to break off the engagement? He indeed admired Long Yushan's beauty and strength, but more importantly, he valued her dragon tribe bloodline. If she joined forces with his Zhong clan, it was possible that an incredibly powerful descendant would be born in the future. This was something that the Open Clouds King had personally instructed him to do, so he had to complete it 100%. Furthermore, this marriage had long since been publicized by the Open Clouds Forbidden Land. If the marriage was suddenly called off now, he and the Open Clouds Forbidden Land would lose all face. Definitely not. He immediately ran to look for Long Yushan. Yet the door was slammed in his face, which made him feel even more uneasy. After a few days, Ling Han issued a challenge to Zhong Badu. If Zhong Badu won, he could just leave without any hesitation. But if Zhong Badu lost, he would have to obediently break off the engagement himself. This was going too far. Zhong Badu was unable to restrain his fury. He was a child of a forbidden land, so when had he ever suffered such grievances in his life? Without even thinking, he agreed to Ling Han's request. Fight. He smirked coldly in his heart. At first, he had planned to kill Ling Han after he had left the Long family. But now that this brat insisted on seeking death himself, he naturally had to fulfill his wish. The two sides agreed to battle in the galaxy 3 days later. 3 days passed very quickly, and Ling Han and Zhong Badu had already arrived in the galaxy. Yang Zige and Jing Yi stood behind Zhong Badu, while there was not a single person behind Ling Han. The Long tribe did not help either side, and stood in the middle. Long Xiangyue had originally wanted to cheer for Ling Han, but she had been grabbed by Long Yushan, and could only sullenly stand in the middle. Ling Han! Zhong Badu roared angrily, his voice rolling like thunder, and actually contained a sliver of the might of a dragon. Come! The Zhong tribe had other intentions in wanting to marry Long Yushan. Otherwise, in order to maintain the purity of their bloodline, the Forbidden Land would all find partners internally. Ling Han picked his ears and blew. Why are you shouting so loudly? I'm not deaf. Why do I feel that you are not only deaf, but also blind and idiot? Zhong Badu smirked coldly. If you had eyes and a brain, you would know that you should not make an enemy of me. Even if you are a saint, you will only be crushed into dust by my open clouds Forbidden Land. Clap, clap, clap. Ling Han clapped. Your words are even better than your singing. I'm just giving you some encouragement. I'm not afraid that you will become arrogant. Zhong Badu looked at Ling Han. Where exactly are you from? If he did not have the backing of a saint king, how would he dare to oppose him? To say that someone who could cultivate to such a height was still an idiot, he really did not believe it. Ling Han, a lone cultivator, Ling Han replied calmly. Since that is the case, then die. Zhong Badu no longer had any patience, and his figure charged out. He wanted to crush Ling Han into pieces. Chapter 1621. Boom! Zhong Badu erupted with the might of a saint. Seals of the great Tao wrapped around his body, and a galaxy appeared. There were more than 7 million stars in his body. The number of stars in a small saint's body was limited to 10 million. If one didn't break through to the medium saint tier, in terms of comprehension of the great Tao, they definitely wouldn't be able to form more than 10 million stars. Judging from this, Zhong Badu's cultivation level had already reached the late stage of the small saint tier. He pressed out a palm, and his origin power materialized into an even larger palm. Numerous large stars appeared, but under his palm, they were like pellets. This palm was far too terrifying. Ling Han flicked his finger, and the killing formation was activated. It transformed into a streak of sword light that sliced toward the large palm that was slapping toward him. In comparison, this streak of sword light was indescribably small. It was only 3 feet long, and the large palm was even larger than a star. They weren't on the same level at all. However, the sword slashed out, and the large palm was immediately sliced in two. Zhong Badu released a muffled groan. He raised his right hand, and blood seeped out of his palm and dripped down. Although he had materialized that large palm, it was closely related to him. Ordinarily speaking, it wouldn't affect him much even if it was shattered. Otherwise, wouldn't this be the same as close-quarters combat? However, Ling Han's sword strike was far too terrifying. Not only had it sliced apart his large palm of origin power, but it had even traced back to its source and wounded his body. A mere eternal river tier cultivator's attack is actually so terrifying, he said slowly. There was an intense caution on his face. Previously, he had exchanged a few simple blows with Ling Han, and knew that Ling Han possessed saint-level battle prowess. However, he had never imagined that the latter was strong enough to rival him. This was too inconceivable. Only now did Yang Zige understand why Zhong Badu had slapped him. He had stepped on Zhong Badu's tail, and touched his sore spot. How stupid! He exchanged a look with Jing Yi, and they could both see a sliver of worry in each other's eyes. Zhong Badu wouldn't be defeated, right? No way. They hurriedly shook their heads. Zhong Badu was a king tier of the younger generation in the open clouds Forbidden Land. Becoming a saint at a mere 100,000 years was proof of this. This kind of talent was practically nature-defying. No matter how freakish Ling Han was, he was only in the eternal river tier. So how could he possibly overturn a saint? They could only console themselves like this. Before this, Who would have believed that an eternal river tear could actually rival a saint? Since that was the case, then what was so strange about him defeating a saint? Ling Han, you've truly attracted my attention, Zhong Badu said with a smile. Being able to possess battle prowess that could rival saints at the eternal river tier. Ling Han definitely possessed an astonishing secret. He's dead set on this. Ling Han's face was filled with disgust. Damn pervert, I didn't expect you to be this kind of person. Zhong Badu was taken aback at first, and then he came to his senses. He couldn't help but fly into a rage. Everyone here was a saint, or at least a saint-level battle prowess. This was the most powerful existence in the world, and yet he dared to shoot his mouth off. How could he not have the slightest bit of dignity as a saint? Die! His head of black hair shot into the sky. Pung, pung, pung. The clothes on his body exploded, only leaving behind a pair of tight-fitting pants. This should be a precious armor, as it possessed great toughness. Divine runes appeared on his skin. These were saint-tier runes that drew upon the great Tao of heaven and earth, and revolved around him. He had killed Ling Han, and directly extracted his soul to obtain his secrets. Eternal dragon, he roared, and a gigantic bronze dragon soared out of his chest. It was as long as 3,000 meters, and it was incredibly illusory. It seemed to be in the past, and also seemed to be in the future, but it was definitely not in the present. Time Dragon, the members of the Long clan all exclaimed in shock, their faces filled with shock. The Dragon Tribe. This was an extremely broad concept. According to legends, the first dragon was nurtured by heaven and earth, and was known as the Origin Dragon. The Origin Dragon had given birth to 9 sons, including the Gold Dragon, Green Dragon, Black Dragon, Crimson Dragon, and so on. These secondary dragons then gave birth to even more complicated descendants with the bloodlines of the various races. Different bloodlines of the dragon tribe would also have different abilities. For example, the Long clan of Gathered Sea Planet was the descendant of the Crimson Dragon, and they were skilled in manipulating fire. Among the various dragon tribes, the Bronze Dragon was the most mysterious. Because this branch of the dragon tribe was skilled in the power of time, they were also known as the Time Dragons. Time, space, darkness, slaughter, and so on. These were all powers of regulation that were extremely difficult to grasp in this world. However, the bloodline of the Time Dragon naturally possessed such abilities, so it was naturally extremely awesome. It could be considered an elite among the dragon tribe. I didn't expect the Zhong clan to have the bloodline of the dragon tribe as well. Gasp, they want to form a marriage alliance. Could it be that they want to combine the bloodlines of the two races and give birth to a descendant that can control both the power of time and fire? The members of the dragon tribe all guessed. Otherwise, why would the Zhong clan travel hundreds of millions of miles to form a marriage alliance with the Long clan? The bronze dragon flew towards Ling Han, the power of time swirling around it. Ling Han punched out, but it was completely ineffective against the bronze dragon. It didn't even raise a single dragon scale. It didn't belong to this world, so how could it be attacked? Ling Han smiled and punched out again. This time, he infused the power of Tide of the Ages. Bang! This punch finally landed on the bronze dragon. However, although Tide of the Ages was a celestial art, Ling Han's cultivation level was too low. He couldn't unleash the true power of this celestial art. It only caused the bronze dragon to pause for a moment before it charged towards Ling Han again. Even so, Zhong Badu was still shocked. His opponent could actually affect time? That was truly inconceivable. This made him even more curious as to what secrets Ling Han was hiding. He couldn't wait to obtain them. Ling Han attacked again. The killing formation glowed and transformed into a streak of sword light that slashed at the bronze dragon. Unfortunately, the bronze dragon wasn't in this world. No matter how powerful this attack was, it couldn't harm it. Ha ha ha. Zhong Badu laughed loudly. He controlled the bronze dragon to charge at Ling Han. Under the power of time, a portion of Ling Han's body would enter the future, a portion would remain in the present, and a portion would return to the past. There was naturally only one result. He would be torn apart. This was a celestial art of the open cloud's forbidden land. It was inherited from the bloodline, and was incredibly powerful. The bronze dragon had already reached Ling Han, its claws grabbing his shoulders and thighs. "Break!" Zhong Badu shouted. However, Ling Han was still standing there unscathed. "Break! Break! Break!" Zhong Badu shouted 3 times. With each shout, he infused a strand of energy into the bronze dragon, increasing its strength. Ling Han tilted his head slightly and peeked out from the bronze dragon's side. He smiled and said, "Are you tired from all the screaming? If you are, then take a rest. Don't make your throat break." How was this possible? Zhong Badu was dumbfounded. That was a bronze dragon. It contained the power of time. If one was attacked by it, their entire body would immediately be torn to pieces. What was going on now? He urged the time dragon with all his might. But no matter how much the power of time flowed, Ling Han remained as unmoving as a mountain. The power of time wasn't omnipotent. After all, Ling Han's body had already reached the level of saintly material. How could the power of time, which was also at the level of a minor saint, destroy saintly material? Ling Han's body shook, and he transformed into an avatar that was 30,000 meters tall. He grabbed the bronze dragon with one hand, and with a furious roar, he forcibly tore the bronze dragon from his true body, as if he was grabbing a water snake. Domineering. Chapter 1622. In the galaxy, Ling Han's Dharma idol towered between heaven and earth, holding a bronze dragon in its hand like a dragon-slaying god of war. This scene was too impactful, causing everyone's breathing to stop, and their spirits to be seized. The eyes of the women of the Long tribe all shone, and were filled with a dazed expression. Ling Han looked at Zhong Badu and calmly asked, "What other moves do you have?" Though his tone was calm, there was already a sliver of killing intent in it. In any case, he was going to fall out with the Open Cloud's Forbidden Land. So he might as well make it bigger and kill Zhong Badu. You ruined someone else's marriage. Would the Open Cloud's Forbidden Land spare him? Of course not. Since that was the case, he might as well kill Zhong Badu. In any case, he was also displeased with this guy. Moreover, only by killing him would this marriage be completely ruined. Zhong Badu couldn't help but lose his momentum. The time dragon was a powerful move of his, but it actually couldn't even harm a hair on Ling Han's body. This was a huge blow to his confidence. At this time, he couldn't help but wonder if he would be defeated. Just as this thought rose up, he hurriedly shook his head. Impossible and not allowed. He was a saint, and more so a prodigy of the Open Cloud's Forbidden Land. So how could he lose to a young man who was only at the Eternal River tier? 9 meridians celestial sword, he exclaimed softly, and the 9 meridians in his body instantly exuded wisps of celestial light. He drew out a saint tool, and it immediately came to life. One after another, seals lit up, exuding endless saintly might. This wasn't the most frightening thing. The celestial light in his body gathered, forming a sharp ray on the blade. With the support of a sliver of celestial chi, it showed its sharpness. To say nothing of the fact that Ling Han was only at the Eternal River tier. Even small saints and medium saints wouldn't dare to be struck by this saint tool. Otherwise, the celestial chi would invade their bodies, and their spirits would instantly be severed. This was a celestial king technique cultivated. Unfortunately, the celestial king technique that the Open Cloud's king had obtained was not complete. When he had broken into the underground vault of the palace to obtain the Celestial King technique, one of his dragon claws had been severed by the Heavenly River King, and the majority of the Celestial King technique had been destroyed. Though the incomplete technique was still considerably valuable, allowing them to cultivate a sliver of celestial chi in the Genesis tier, and endlessly increase their battle prowess, they ultimately could not use this to open the doors to the celestial realm. Otherwise, the Open Cloud's king would not have stayed in the immortal realm, and would have long since entered the celestial realm. However, wasn't this enough to deal with the measly Eternal River tier elite? Ling Han glanced at it, a sliver of wariness in his expression. He could sense an aura similar to that of the divine demon sword from this saint tool. Immortal level power, however, compared to the divine demon sword, the celestial level power on this saint tool was really too weak. In fact, it was almost indiscernible. Ling Han did not dare to underestimate it. After all, It was a celestial-level power. It posed a great threat to any ancient martial art practitioner in the ancient realm. Death Zhong Badu flew over on his sword. In the beginning, he had always been fighting from a distance. This was the most familiar fighting method for warriors. But now it was the opposite. He wanted to fight in close combat with Ling Han, because only when he was directly hit by a saint weapon would he be able to display its strongest effect. Hoo. As the saint tool moved, even the stars in the universe trembled. In particular, there was a sliver of celestial chi wrapped around the blade of the sword, which caused great damage to the space of the immortal realm. The void was forcibly torn apart, and multiple black holes appeared. Ling Han's right hand shook, and the divine demon sword was already drawn. In a battle of precious tools, who was afraid of who? Ding 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 ding. The divine demon sword and saint tool continuously clashed. The strength of both weapons was level 17, so naturally, neither could do anything to the other. However, the divine demon sword was essentially a celestial tool. Even if it had not truly awakened now, it was still thousands of times more powerful than a saint tool that only possessed a sliver of celestial chi. Under the continuous collisions, the celestial chi on the saint tool continued to tremble like a swimming fish. It was actually about to shatter. What? Zhong Badu was really panicking now. The 9 Meridians celestial sword was his most powerful technique. In the past, when a 9 Meridians celestial king attacked, there had even been a celestial king that had been directly slain by this move. Now, however, it was being slashed to the point where it was about to shatter. How inconceivable was this? I'll kill you first, and then send the open clouds king to hell in the future. Ling Han brandished the divine demon sword in his right hand, while his left hand shot out the 9 heavens flame. This was also a celestial king tier level attack. Even if it was still very weak now, Zhong Badu was only at the level of the immortal realm. Who exactly are you? Zhong Badu asked in a low voice. From the looks of it, it seemed like Ling Han had a personal grudge against the open clouds forbidden land. There's no need for you to know. Rest in peace on the road to hell. Ling Han activated all of the killing formations in his body, causing his battle prowess to soar. Added with the divine demon sword and 9 heavens flame, he was practically invincible among the small saints. Detestable. Zhong Badu brandished his sword to parry, yet he was forced back dozens of miles with every strike. In terms of aura, he was already completely suppressed by Ling Han. What chilled his heart the most was that the sword and flames in Ling Han's hands were far too frightening. They made him feel as if he would definitely die if he came into contact with them. This undoubtedly further affected his ability to fight. He wanted to widen the distance between them, but it was he who had taken the initiative to close the distance just then. Widening the distance between them now was easier said than done. Ling Han used the 9 heavens flame to create a cage, trapping Zhong Badu within it. And in this small world, he battled with his full strength. Pooh! Zhong Badu spat out a mouthful of blood. He was greatly astonished. In a head-on clash, he was actually not a match for Ling Han. He was about to go crazy. A high and mighty small saint actually lost to an eternal river tier in terms of raw power. Even if Ling Han was in the pinnacle level of the eternal river tier, this was far too unreasonable. In 3 moves, I will send you on your way, Ling Han declared coldly. Dream on, Zhong Badu said through gritted teeth. He began to burn his life force, planning to fight with his life on the line. But in front of Ling Han, so what if he fought with his life on the line? Surrounded by the 9 heavens flame, he could not even escape. Show mercy. A melodious and deep voice traveled out from gathered sea planet. It transcended space and suddenly rang out. Dragon's might was vast like a tsunami. Greetings, Grand Elder. All the members of the Long tribe knelt on one knee. Even Long Yushan's expression was respectful, her hands pressed against the sides of her legs. The one who had spoken was the Grand Elder of the Long tribe, a medium saint elite. Zhong Badu's heart settled. The battle between saints was too intense. Even if it was a battle taking place in the galaxy, it would still alarm the Grand Elder of the Long tribe who was in seclusion. Would this Grand Elder just watch as Ling Han killed him? Of course not. Otherwise, the Long tribe would also be implicated. What logic was there in watching someone die, and not lending a hand. Ling Han ignored him. Since he had already decided to make his move, no one could dissuade him. Kill. At first, Zhong Badu had already relaxed, but his hair immediately stood on end in fright. How can you be so unreasonable? The medium saint has already spoken, and you still won't stop? He could only move to parry. Under the terrifying impact, he spat out another mouthful of blood. I said stop. A loud roar traveled out from gathered sea planet again. This time, the dragon's might became tangible. Amidst the rolling sound waves, a crimson true dragon appeared, charging towards Ling Han. Ling Han did not care about it at all, and continued to wildly slash at Zhong Badu. He was definitely going to kill this person. Pung! The crimson true dragon crashed onto the cage weaved by the nine heavens flame. Under the powerful collision, the cage instantly shattered into pieces. However, the quality of the nine heavens flame was really too high, and it forcibly burned the crimson true dragon into ashes. Zhong Badu seized the opportunity and hurriedly fled. Third sword. Ling Han's icy cold voice rang out from behind him. Chapter 1624. Ling Han entered the cave, and darkness invaded and enveloped him, causing his vision, hearing, touch and other senses to rapidly weaken. Finally, just like the first time, he completely lost his 5 senses and 6 senses. He couldn't even sense his own existence. Even the flow of origin power and heartbeat had no trace, as if he was sleeping in a dark tomb. Even eternal river tears couldn't break free. He activated the killing formation and launched an attack. In reality, he didn't know whether he really launched an attack either. He only felt as if he had launched an attack, but there was no change in the slightest. Come, even saint-level power couldn't do anything to this darkness. Ling Han could be sure that this was definitely a celestial-level technique. He thought for a moment, and drew out the divine demon sword. Immediately, a speck of light appeared. Although it was extremely blurry, Ling Han clearly felt it. As expected, celestial-level power could resist this kind of darkness, but the divine demon sword was not enough. Ling Han put away his sword. Hong, his hand ignited with the nine heavens flame. Instantly, it was as if a small candle was lit in the pitch-black darkness. Although the light was pitifully weak, it could become a source of light. Feasible. Ling Han was overjoyed. Where the nine heavens flame shone, his 5 senses and 6 senses recovered, as if he had come back to life. He slowly advanced while sticking close to the cave wall. The light was limited, and he had to walk along the cave wall to ensure that he didn't step on a wrong path. This cave actually wasn't very deep, but because Ling Han's advancing speed was too slow, he finally reached the deepest part of the cave after spending a whole half a day. A stone room with only 4 walls, and in the center was a stone statue. There wasn't the slightest change, as if it was yesterday. Brat, how did you come? The heavenly emperor of thunder and fire's voice was heard, filled with surprise. Previously, it was Hunyo who brought Ling Han in, and Ling Han himself was like a headless fly. Now Ling Han actually walked in alone, which indeed made him very strange. Ling Han smiled slightly and said, "If Senior doesn't welcome me, I'll leave." Wait. The heavenly emperor of thunder and fire hurriedly urged him to stay. You got those 4 things. Fortunately, I didn't fail you. Ling Han nodded. You're clearly only at the eternal river tier. Huh? The heavenly emperor of thunder and fire paused. You're a freak, actually engraving so many formations in your body. Although the might of each formation is extremely weak, they can elevate your battle prowess to the low extreme of the Genesis tier. This is something that even I was unable to accomplish back then. Ling Han laughed and said, Now does Senior believe that I have completed the mission? Where is it? Hurry up and bring it over. The heavenly emperor of thunder and fire's voice was getting a little nervous. Well, the goods will be delivered at the same time. Ling Han said, You stinking brat, are you afraid that I'll blame you? It's not like he's some peak-level immortal. The heavenly emperor of thunder and fire hurriedly shut his mouth, realizing that he had let the cat out of the bag. Oh. Ling Han nodded. So Senior took out an ordinary celestial technique to fool me. Hehe. The immovable deity metal body mystical power is indeed something that I obtained after spending a great deal of effort in an ancient site. Although it's not my strongest technique, It's more than enough for you. If it's too strong, you won't be able to learn it, the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire explained, who asked Ling Han to hold his lifeline now. In truth, Ling Han was only speaking casually. Celestial techniques were indeed divided into high and low levels, but it also depended on the degree of applicability. In any case, he felt that the immovable deity metal body mystical power was very suitable for him. Then please teach me, Senior. He took out the true dragon's horn, the heavenly phoenix feather, and the other two god tools. The stone statue glowed faintly, and a white ball of light surged out, floating towards Ling Han. Ling Han stretched out a finger and pressed it on the ball of light. Instantly, innumerable patterns shone in his mind, imparting to him a secret technique that could not be described with words. It was precisely the immovable deity metal body mystical power. Brat, do as I say, and scatter these 4 god tools around the stone statue. The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire's voice sounded. Ling Han did as he was told. On the other side he communicated with Small Tower. If the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire suddenly wanted to make trouble, then he had to forcefully make a move, even if he risked the danger of the Celestial King discovering the Black Tower. If he lost his life, what was the point of keeping secrets? Z. A flash of lightning surged out from the left eye of the stone statue, while a flash of fire surged out from the right eye of the stone statue. The stone statue glowed, and the true dragon's horn and the other 3 god tools floated into the air. They resonated with each other, and then suddenly fused together. The flash of lightning and the flash of fire interweaved, and it was incredibly scorching, so much so that Ling Han could not see what was currently happening inside. After a long while, the light faded, and a small person appeared in front of Ling Han. He was about 2 or 3 years old, and his body was naked, fair and tender. Ling Han suddenly felt as if he had been struck by lightning. This couldn't be the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire, right? Damn brat, what? Hurry up and give me some clothes. Sure enough, the voice of an adult came out of the child's mouth. Haha, how many years has it been? I can finally speak with my mouth. Awesome. Ling Han tossed over a piece of clothing and said, could it be that Senior has been heavily injured and has been recuperating here all this time? You've guessed it. The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire sighed. In the past, I was extraordinarily talented and could not help but be proud and arrogant. I offended a considerable number of people, and in the end, I was hunted down by an elite, and my physical body was destroyed. A wisp of my broken soul came to the ancient realm, and initially, I wanted to find a body to possess. Unexpectedly, there was an anomaly in the space, and I actually bumped into this small world. There is a mysterious power here that has suppressed me, causing me to be forced to reside in the lightning river and sea of fire underground. I spent millions of years before I finally managed to create this stone statue. I had originally wanted to guide those who came after me to help me escape. Unexpectedly, I was unable to control the defensive power within my body. Although this boundless darkness has protected my broken soul, it has also become a shackle that has trapped me to death. Fortunately, there was that little girl last time, and now there's you, brat. Finally, I have been able to escape. Although this body cannot be compared to a divine fetus, it is still formed from the fusion of 4 saintly materials. It is barely enough. After all, the strength of an immortal lies in the spirit, and not the physical body. Ling Han listened quietly, and realized that this Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire had the potential to be a chatterbox. He had only asked one question, and the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was already talking nonstop. Perhaps it was because he had been alone for too long, and now that he had encountered a living person, he could not help but want to talk to his heart's content. He asked, what plans do you have now, Senior? Cultivation, of course. Although I used a supreme mystical power to fuse 4 saintly materials into my body, they are only saintly materials after all. Right now my cultivation level is only at the low extreme of the Genesis tier. Furthermore, my spirit has been severely injured, and it is impossible for me to recover to my previous level in a short period of time. The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire sighed. Dare I ask, Senior, What was your cultivation level back then? Ling Han couldn't help but be curious. Immortal Palace. Chapter 1625. Severing Mundane, Dividing Soul, Immortal Palace Tier, Ascending Origin Tier, and Celestial King Tier. The Immortal Palace Tier stood on the third level of the Celestial Realm, which was equivalent to the Heavenly Body Tier of the Immortal Realm. It was already enough to be called an elite. Ling Han looked at the little brat in front of him, and couldn't even call him senior. It was too awkward. He laughed. Don't you have a name? I am the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire. The little wimp puffed out his chest, looking very arrogant. Ling Han glanced at him, and didn't pay him any attention. Now that he had fulfilled his agreement with the other party, both of them had gotten what they wanted, and didn't know each other anything. He clapped his hands, and was about to walk out of the cave. But he had only taken one step when he felt his clothes tighten. Turning around, he saw a small hand tightly gripping the corner of his clothes. Hey, don't tell me you've shrunk in size and courage? You don't dare to go out by yourself now, do you? Ling Han laughed. Pa, I roamed the world in the past, and which historical site didn't I dare enter? You dare say that I'm a coward? The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire's face was filled with disdain. Then why are you pulling me? Ling Han asked. I don't know how to get out. The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire's face was a little awkward. Puff Ling Han immediately burst out laughing. You set up this trap yourself, yet you can't walk out by yourself? Nonsense. That was set up when I was still relatively powerful. Right now, I'm only at the low extreme of the Genesis tier. So how could I possibly break through it? The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire said through gritted teeth. How could this brat be so insensible? If he told him to open up a path, he should just do it. Ling Han thought for a moment and said, Are there any travel fees? You only have money in your eyes? The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire's face was filled with astonishment. Why didn't he realize that this kid was greedy to such an extent in the past? Ling Han laughed and said, I'm just kidding. You don't have to take it seriously. However, if you really want to thank me, then I don't mind accepting some benefits. After all, it's your sincerity. The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire rolled his eyes, completely speechless at Ling Han. Ling Han activated the Nine Heavens flame, and broke through the darkness. The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire could not help but be surprised. Why does this flame give me an incomparably fearful feeling? Even if I was at my peak, I would not want to come into contact with it. Ling Han didn't explain. The ancestral flame was too precious. The two of them were still friends, and he didn't want their friendship to capsize just because of some treasures. The adult and the child began to walk back, but after walking 2/3 of the way, Ling Han felt the rope around his waist tighten. It turned out that the day's time was up, and Queen was beginning to reel in the rope as promised. In this way, his speed became much faster, and Little Wimp was like a flag that flew up. Hula, in a short while they had already arrived outside the cave. The Empress looked at the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire, and a look of astonishment flashed across her face. She had entered a cave, and had actually come out with a little brat. This was naturally strange. However, she sensed a powerful aura from Little Wimp, and it made her feel as if she was facing a great enemy. Yo, this little girl is really beautiful. I have not seen anyone more outstanding than her in the celestial realm. The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire also commented on the Empress. My wife, don't look too much. Ling Han pressed his hand over and covered her eyes. 2 more eyes won't make you lose a piece of flesh. How petty. The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire muttered. Perhaps it was because his present body was too small, and it also affected his way of thinking. So he didn't continue to stare at the peerlessly beautiful Empress. Since I have nothing to do, I will follow you around. When I reach the high extreme of the Genesis tier, I will break into the celestial realm. You are really not polite. A strange smile appeared on Ling Han's lips. I say, don't regret it in future. He really had too many enemies. At least, the Open Clouds Forbidden Land could attack at any time, and the 8 Stones Forbidden Land actually hadn't been dealt with yet. If they confirmed that he couldn't reproduce the strength of a Saint King again, they would definitely continue to target him. Moreover, He had also destroyed Han Chi's physical body in the celestial realm. And who knew? A severing mundane ancestor might arrive any day. If he followed him, it would be the flash of blades. How could the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire know that Ling Han was so good at causing trouble? His expression was full of disapproval. He was now a small saint, after all, and his battle prowess had soared to medium saints. In the whole ancient realm, how many people did he need to be afraid of? Who knew what expression he would have when a group of great saints, saint kings, and even severing mundane ancestors appeared one day? Ling Han returned to the Great Ling Empire, and after leaving behind some cultivation resources, he drew out the cloud-piercing shuttle and headed towards Wood Figure Planet. The Empress entered into the Black Tower to continue comprehending. She wanted to break through to the Saint tier in the shortest time possible. If she broke through, it would definitely be earth-shattering. Divine Fetus, Celestial King technique, and added with 10 million heavenly bodies, and furthermore, she cultivated the regulations of 2 realms simultaneously. Once she broke through, her power would reach the peak stage of the small saint tier, and her battle prowess would definitely be strong enough to defy natural order. Otherwise, it would be a waste of the 10 million heavenly bodies that she had painstakingly formed. The heavenly emperor of thunder and fire was not surprised that Ling Han had a spatial god tool on him. This was really too common in the celestial realm. He was obviously a lazy person, and would rather sit in the cloud-piercing shuttle and spend more time than be willing to travel by himself. However, Ling Han asked him for some guidance, and gained a considerable understanding of the celestial realm. However, the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire had only been in the immortal palace tier at the time, and indeed knew many things about the celestial realm, but after reaching a certain level, he was still in the dark. Why did so few people from the celestial realm come to the ancient realm? There were obviously large tracts of land here, so why didn't they go and rule over them? That was because the celestial realm itself was also boundlessly vast. In the celestial realm, cities were the unit of force, and each city was comparable to a great star. And some giant cities were even comparable to a whole galaxy. Thus, merely the territory of the celestial realm was something to be fought over. There was practically no one who was as barren as the ancient realm. Furthermore, why could the celestial realm be called the celestial realm? That was because the celestial realm had indestructible divine essence. This was the key that allowed people to live forever. Once they left this kind of environment for a long period of time, it was also an irreversible process for celestials. Their lifespan would be severed, and they would be no different from Genesis tiers. For the sake of fighting over territory that was practically useless, they would have to sacrifice their own life. Who would be willing to do that? Thus, even if there were people who had entered into the ancient realm, they were those of the younger generation who had not advanced into the severing mundane tier. They needed to rely on the forces of their clans to advance into the ancient realm. Firstly, it was for experience, and secondly, it was to search for treasures that had flowed into the ancient realm in the great turmoil of the past. For example, Han Chi. But even the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire did not know the reason for the great turmoil of the celestial realm in the past. It was said that this was caused by a celestial king, and only a celestial king was qualified to know. 2 years later, the cloud-piercing shuttle finally arrived at Wood Figure Planet. As soon as Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was reborn, he immediately ran around. He was a minor saint, and his strength was comparable to a medium saint. Even if he couldn't defeat a great saint, it was more than enough for him to run. Therefore, Ling Han didn't have to worry. "Ling Han, let me out," the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden suddenly said through the Black Tower. Ling Han summoned the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and suddenly discovered that her aura was incredibly violent, causing even him to be slightly moved. She was about to break through. Genesis tier. Chapter 16:26. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had obtained the inheritance of the 3 Phoenix Kings, raising her bloodline to the highest level of the immortal realm. Moreover, she also had an endless supply of alchemical pills from Ling Han, so there were practically no bottlenecks in her cultivation as she comprehended, under the reincarnation tree. How could her cultivation speed not be fast? If they hadn't been delayed in the underworld for more than 10 years, she could have reached this step even faster. And now she was finally about to break through. She just smiled at Ling Han, and with a leap, she entered the starry sky. If he were to undergo the sage tribulation here, the entire wood-figure planet would probably be destroyed. Of course, Ling Han also followed them into the starry sky. Although he could not help at all, he still had to watch from the side. Boom! A thundercloud formed in the ice-cold darkness of the universe, shrouding the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's head. The first bolt of lightning had already struck down impatiently. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden unfurled a pair of wind wings that spanned 500 kilometers. She flew toward the lightning and engaged in a fierce battle. In the blink of an eye, 10 golden paths appeared, one after another. The Star Sand Saint and the other elites all appeared. And when they discovered that the person undergoing the heavenly tribulation was actually the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, they were all stunned to the extreme. Aside from the Star Sand Saint, the other 9 saints had all participated in the disciple selection convention, and none of them had ever been better than the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. If it weren't for the fact that the memory of saints was really too good, they wouldn't even remember such a person whose talent could only be described as average. Indeed, in the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy where King Tears gathered, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden could only be considered to be of average aptitude. But who would have thought that such a mediocre person would actually become a saint? Even the Star Sand Saint felt slightly embarrassed. He had chosen Gu Daoyi as his disciple, but in his opinion, Gu Daoyi would need at least 10,000 years to become a saint. How long had it been? Yet this woman had already reached this level. It seemed like everyone related to Ling Han was a monster. Within 3 years, 2 saints have emerged in succession. It's truly unbelievable. The 10 saints all sighed emotionally. Ling Han was curious. 2 sages? He strode over and asked, "Who else has become a saint?" "Formless," Torrential Rain Saint said. A formless became a saint again. Ling Han wasn't surprised. She already had a complete comprehension of becoming a saint in the first place. And added with the fact that she had a 5-element body now, she had an endless supply of alchemical pills. So she was naturally faster than the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. However, the notionless saint would no longer have any experience to rely on after reaching this level. Thus, his rate of improvement would plummet, and he would definitely be overtaken by the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Even the Empress, Ling Han, and the others would surpass them. "Where is he?" Ling Han asked. He did not see the saint appear. He left a month after he became a saint. "No one knows where he went," the Torrential Rain Saint said again. He did not dare to act like a senior in front of Ling Han. What a joke. Even the Star Sand Saint treated Ling Han as an equal. If he continued to put on airs, wouldn't he be riding on his master's head? Ling Han's brows furrowed slightly. He knew that Notionless Saint had an obsession in his heart, and he wanted to settle the score with his 3 traitorous disciples. However, the Notionless Saint had also said that after so many years, it was very likely that all 3 of his disciples had already advanced to the saint tier. If he went, he might not necessarily be able to achieve victory. However, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden had already left, so it was useless for Ling Han to worry. He could only hope that this saint was fine. No matter what, he was still a small saint. As long as he did not stubbornly fight to the death, it would be extremely difficult for him to kill even saint kings. Hung long long. The heavenly tribulation was terrifying. This was the tribulation of saints. After taking this step, they would receive the approval of heaven and earth. In a sense, they were acting on behalf of heaven and earth. Thus, this step was incredibly difficult to take. Fortunately, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden had obtained the inheritance of the 3 saint kings, and her battle prowess was far superior to before. Even resisting this heavenly tribulation was easy for her. Half a day later, the heavenly tribulation dissipated, and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden arrived at Ling Han's side on a golden path. Although she had still suffered some injuries, they were not painful at all. "Congratulations, fellow cultivator. the 9 small saints said as they clasped their hands in greeting to the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Since she had already become a saint, she was on equal footing with them. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden nodded with a reserved smile. She was not as proud as the empress, and was still quite polite to the others. She was like a helpless little bird at Ling Han's side, and the other saints were all envious of her. It was not easy to become a saint herself. What more to find a companion who was also a saint? Ling Han was destined to become a saint, and this husband and wife were both saints, which was rare. Ling Han. The empress's voice also rang out. Ling Han's expression involuntarily became strange. It couldn't be such a coincidence, right? You're also about to break through? He asked through his divine sense. The empress nodded. It really was. Ling Han waved a hand, and the empress was teleported out from the Black Tower. The empress did not say anything, and with a step, she had already arrived at the place where the heavenly phoenix divine maiden had undergone her tribulation. Hong long long, the dark clouds that had just dispersed gathered again. Star Sand Saint. The 9 small saints. Could it be that the saints of their clan were wholesale, undergoing their heavenly tribulation one after another? In the past, which one of them hadn't gone through countless years of accumulation and accumulation before breaking through the barrier of the Genesis tier and finally becoming a saint? But now, it was as if these young people had been injected with stimulants, and they had broken through one after another in a short few decades. Comparing oneself to others will only make one angry. The Star Sand Saint suddenly faltered. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden's heavenly tribulation was very normal, but something was wrong now. This woman's heavenly tribulation was far too terrifying, and even he felt a chill in his heart. The 9 small saints involuntarily retreated. The heavenly tribulation had not yet descended, but it was already enough to make their hair stand on end. Quang! The first bolt of lightning descended, and transformed into a humanoid god of war. The moment it appeared, it waved the spear in its hand and attacked the empress. Gasp! The 9 small saints were all astonished. This strike is enough to kill me. What kind of beings were they? Even medium saints would find it difficult to kill them with a single strike. One had to be a great saint. No wonder even the Star Sand Saint exclaimed in shock. This heavenly tribulation was actually on the level of a great saint. Heavens! Is this really the heavenly tribulation that a saint who has just broken through to the next level should face? If they encountered a great saint, they could still run if they were no match for them. However, heavenly tribulation was a test of heaven and earth, so who could escape it? If a small saint took the attack of a great saint head-on, the only outcome would be death. Yet the empress was unafraid. As she flipped her hands, she unleashed one celestial technique after another to resist the heavenly tribulation. Surprisingly, she was not at a disadvantage. The saints were all speechless. You have just broken through. Yet a small saint can already resist the attack of a great saint. Is there still justice in this world? Just then, they had thought that they had misjudged the greatest prodigy in the world, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. However, only now did they realize that they had misjudged even more. Gu Daoyi could not compare to such a prodigy, no matter how hard he tried. Quang quang quang. Multiple bolts of heavenly tribulation descended, and more lightning humanoids appeared. Each of them possessed the power of a great saint, and they could not be completely destroyed. Even if they were scattered, they would immediately regroup. They were completely undying. When the number of lightning humanoids reached 50, they finally experienced a qualitative change, and were suppressing the empress. Humph! The empress's beautiful eyes widened. Xiao xiao xiao. Multiple figures leaped out from her body. These were her 9 doppelgangers. Instantly, the 10 empresses faced the heavenly tribulation together. Chapter 1628. Time passed quietly, and in the blink of an eye, another year had passed. The Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Maiden had completely stabilized their cultivation levels, and the Empress was especially terrifying. She was at the peak stage of the small saint tier in the first place, and 10 million stars could no longer advance any further. In this year, she had been cultivating under the reincarnation tree, and would only occasionally spend the night with Ling Han. Under the reincarnation tree, 1 year was more than 3,000 years, and added with the Empress's talent of a divine fetus, her comprehension had completely caught up with her cultivation level, and she had truly reached the peak stage of the small saint tier. This was an unbelievable speed, and she could also achieve it. Though she had been slow in breaking through previously, it was precisely because of her strong accumulation that she instantly rushed to the peak stage of the small saint tier, aiming for medium saint. Now the Empress could match the peak stage of the great saint tier when she unleashed her full battle prowess, surpassing 8 stars. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was far inferior, though she had the inheritance of the 3 phoenix kings. After entering the saint tier, her advancement was still slow. Now, she was still in the early stage of the small saint tier, and there was still a long way to go before she reached the middle stage. Meanwhile, Ling Han began the path of mad advancement. Previously, he had not forgotten to ingest alchemical pills every day, accumulating origin power. By now, the number of heavenly bodies had already reached 6 million, but if he wanted to reach 10 million, he would probably still need another 3 years' time. This was already the limit. Unless there was a saintly medicine that he could freely supply, there would not be a qualitative improvement in his improvement. The others had also improved greatly. For example, the Rain Emperor had already broken through to the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier, and was also advancing towards the height of 10 million stars. And the most unexpected was the large black dog. He had actually become a saint. This despicable dog could also become a saint? It was not only Ling Han who felt this strange. Whenever this large black dog was mentioned, almost every student would grit their teeth in anger. This large black dog was too despicable, never tired of mocking others, and had no morals to speak of. Moreover, it now had 2 more little brothers, a rabbit and an old ginseng, causing the entire martial arts courtyard to be in chaos. Later, the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire also joined this strange group, and the appearance of the child saint caused everyone's eyes to pop out. Thankfully, everyone soon learned that the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was the reincarnation of a saint. Though they were still very shocked that he had recovered his saint tier cultivation so quickly, it was still within a reasonable range. However, in the short span of a few years, 5 sages had emerged consecutively, breaking the previous legend that only one of the students in this batch could become a sage. Thus, all the students were excited. It did not matter if their cultivation speed was slower, as there was still a sliver of hope for them to become saints. On this day, a golden path suddenly appeared in the starry sky. Then a saint arrived. All the saints went out to welcome him. If this saint suddenly attacked, it would cause great damage. In terms of escaping, a small saint was no weaker than a saint king. Thus, they had to be prepared. This saint was none other than the notionless saint. Upon hearing this, Ling Han immediately went to see the notionless saint. However, he found that the notionless saint's complexion was extremely poor, and he had sustained severe injuries. "What's going on?" Ling Han asked with a slight frown. Over the years, he had come to view the notionless saint as a good teacher and a helpful friend. With his protective personality, he would definitely be enraged upon seeing him. The notionless saint sighed and said, "As soon as I became a saint, I went to seek revenge on those 3 traitorous disciples, but, of course, the results were not good." Under Ling Han's questioning, he found out that one of the 3 disciples of the notionless saint had failed to become a saint, and had been dead for many years. However, the other 2 disciples were extremely outstanding. Not only had they digested the fruits of the way that the notionless saint had obtained, but they had even advanced to become medium saints. Not only had he failed to avenge himself, but he had also been hunted down. If it were not for the fact that all saints had similar speed, he would not have just sustained severe injuries. Instead, he would not have been able to escape. He had waited bitterly for countless years, and had finally become a saint again after much difficulty. However, his revenge was still so far away, and this naturally made him depressed. He would only seek revenge after becoming a medium saint. He didn't have enough confidence in himself. After all, it was extremely difficult to advance a single step after stepping into the sage realm. Hundreds of millions of years had passed, and his two disciples had just stepped into the medium sage realm. So, it would take at least hundreds of millions of years for him to catch up to them step by step. You have to have confidence in yourself. Ling Han patted the notionless saint's shoulder and said, "When I become a saint, I'll carefully study saint-level alchemical pills and concoct some saintly pills that can help you break through quickly. That way, you'll be able to beat up those two unfilial disciples." With such a deep hatred, he definitely had to avenge himself. It would be too much to ask someone else to do it. The notionless saint nodded. He was still relatively confident in Ling Han. He was extremely rueful at how correct his decision had been. Now, not only had he returned to the saint tier, but he could even advance to become a medium saint and great saint. A few more days passed, and the golden path once again appeared. This, the Star Sand Saint, and the other saints were slightly annoyed. Should they put up a sign outside of Wood Figure Planet that warned all saints not to disturb them? There was one after another, and there was no end to this one. A terrifying aura swept out. This new saint was not a small saint. Humph. The Star Sand Saint replied in displeasure, and immediately suppressed this aura. "I am Zhong Yi, from the Open Cloud's Forbidden Land," a proud voice said, filled with a sense of superiority. "A mere medium saint. Do you not understand etiquette?" the Star Sand Saint asked. The golden path disappeared, and a middle-aged man appeared. He was tall and slender, and his appearance was also very handsome. His hands were clasped behind his back, and he was not afraid of the Star Sand Saint. "My ancestor is a Saint King, and I have come here on the orders of my ancestor. If you look down on me, that is equivalent to looking down on my ancestor. Is that what you mean?" The Star Sand Saint was extremely gloomy. Having a Saint King ancestor was really impressive. If he was all alone, he naturally wouldn't let a medium saint show off his might. He could deal with him however he wanted. However, the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy was his blood, sweat, and tears. He could not let it go, nor could he cut it off. Thus he didn't explode. He only asked in a low voice, "Why are you here?" "Get that despicable brat named Ling Han to come out," Zhong Yi said coldly. He had actually dared to kill someone from the Open Cloud's Forbidden Land. Humph. The Star Sand Saint was at a loss for words. Why was it this little ancestor again? He had to admit defeat. Ling Han was far too good at stirring up trouble. For example, he had never seen a Saint King in the past dozen or so years. However, ever since Ling Han had appeared in the academy, Saint Kings had popped up one after another, as if they didn't cost anything. He couldn't even see them normally, so how could he offend them? However, Ling Han was going to provoke them every now and then. What kind of physique did he have? Was he born to offend Saint Kings? "Oh, the Zhong clan has finally come." There was a faint chuckle as Ling Han appeared. Beside him were the Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. A medium saint had appeared, so they were naturally worried about Ling Han facing him alone. Zhong Yi immediately walked over to Ling Han, and his pupils involuntarily contracted. Sure enough, it was just as he had seen in his memories. This was a junior who hadn't even advanced to the Genesis tier yet. Chapter 1629. Inconceivable. An eternal river tier could actually kill a saint. Where were the ironclad rules of martial art? However, this young man only had the combat strength of a peak minor saint. Killing Zhong Badu was his limit. Naturally, he didn't have the slightest chance of winning against a medium saint. That was why he was sent flying by a slap from the Long family's ancestor. Zhong Yi looked at Ling Han coldly and said arrogantly, "Since you're already here, why aren't you kneeling down and accepting your death?" Ling Han laughed and said, "You're an unreasonable person." "Reason?" Zhong Yi sneered. "I'm a medium saint, and my words are the reason. Furthermore, you've killed a member of my Zhong clan. Do you really think you can live?" The Zhong clan was not like the other Forbidden Lands. Because it had been established for a relatively short period of time, there was only one Saint King in the clan, and they did not even have a great saint. Other than him, there were only 2 medium saints and only 4 small saints. Thus, Zhong Badu was naturally highly regarded. It would not be a problem for him to become a great sage in the future, and it was even possible for him to become a saint king. But now, he had died at the hands of Ling Han. Must die. It wasn't just him. Everyone related to Ling Han had to die. If they didn't kill until their blood flowed like an ocean, how could they be worthy of the open clouds Forbidden Land's reputation? There was a great saint here, and he would not provoke him for the time being. Thus, he would only suppress Ling Han this time, and bring him back to the open clouds Forbidden Land to perform a blood sacrifice. Then the open clouds king would personally descend, and wipe out all the lives on this celestial body. The might of the Forbidden Land was untouchable. Anyone who dared to violate it would be exterminated, leaving not even a blade of grass alive. Ling Han nodded and said, "If you say so, then I'm relieved. I like to trample on bullies like you the most. The feeling of getting rid of evil for the people is really great." Zhongyi couldn't help but chuckle coldly and say, "Young man, do you think that I won't dare to touch you just because you have a great saint by your side?" He thought that Ling Han's backer was the Star Sand Saint, and he couldn't help but sneer. Would the Star Sand Saint dare to move? His eyes swept over, and his pupils shrank. Two female saints, wow, so beautiful. He only glanced at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's face before glancing away. Then his eyes stopped on the Empress's face, and he couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. Stunning, truly stunning. As a saint, he should not have moved even if the sky collapsed in front of him. But now his little heart was beating nonstop. It was as if it was his first love, or as if it was the first time he was having fun with a woman. It made his martial arts heart disappear, leaving only his innate instincts. He wanted this woman. "She's your woman?" Zhongyi pointed at the Empress and asked Ling Han. "It's my wife. Don't let your imagination run wild. You'll die faster if you do that," Ling Han said indifferently. Ha 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 ha. Zhongyi naturally wouldn't take this threat seriously. After all, this girl was just a minor saint. In front of a medium saint, even 1,000 little saints would not be enough. He could suppress them with a flip of his hand. "I'm here." The large black dog appeared, and beside him was a 4 or 5-year-old child. There was also a rabbit that was half the height of a human, and its eyes were as red as rubies. There was also a ginseng that could walk. It was as thick as a human arm, and it even had facial features. They were the infamous troublemaking quartet of the academy, and their mere mention of their name would cause others to pale in fright. "You ugly ghost, why are you looking for my underling?" The large black dog stood on his hind legs, and he scratched his behind. A piercing sound rang out as his paw scratched against metal, and it was so uncomfortable that one would spit up blood. However, he didn't seem to care at all. In fact, he even brought his paw to his nose and sniffed it, an intoxicated expression on his face. Zhongyi's lips twitched involuntarily. The open clouds Forbidden Land was extremely secluded, and he hadn't seen many saints before. In particular, he had encountered such a tasteless being. His outlook on life was about to become twisted. Scram! The heavenly emperor of thunder and fire sent the large black dog flying with a kick. He also acted like a hooligan and said, "This brat is under my protection. What do you want?" Zhongyi's lips twitched again. What a young saint. He's definitely possessed someone else's body. However, after possessing someone else's body, one's cultivation level would be limited by two things: the soul and the physical body. This was the wooden bucket principle, and it was determined by the weakest of the two. What kind of concept is this? Even if he started cultivating when he was in his mother's womb, he would only have cultivated for a few years. Are all the people here monsters? An eternal river tier cultivator can kill a saint? A 4 or 5-year-old small saint. And now, there's a despicable dog saint? Woof! Damn brat, Grandpa Dog is going to bite your butt into 3 pieces. The large black dog charged over, and engaged in a fierce battle with the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire. Both the man and the dog were extraordinary. There was no need to mention the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire. He had originally been an immortal palace tier elite, and he was proficient in the regulations of lightning and fire. In fact, he had far surpassed the level of a saint. However, his current cultivation level was too low, so his battle prowess could only reach the level of a medium saint. The large black dog was even more freakish. His physique was incredibly powerful, and even a medium saint's battle prowess was completely unscathed. He opened his mouth and bit down at the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire, showing no signs of weakness. Zhongyi instantly felt an urge to vomit blood as he watched this. How terrifying! They're clearly just two small saints, yet they possess the battle prowess of a medium saint. They're completely capable of facing me head-on. Could it be that he had cultivated in the Forbidden Land for too long, and the world had already become so different that he couldn't recognize it? He calmed himself down. It didn't matter. No matter what, they only possessed the battle prowess of a medium saint. The Open Cloud's Forbidden Land was guarded by a Saint King, so mere medium saints were completely insignificant. Ignorant fool, Zhongyi snorted, and his gaze focused on Ling Han again. Despicable brat, why haven't you stepped forward? Kneel and await your punishment. Don't forget that I'm still here. The Star Sand Saint couldn't stand this any longer. He was a great saint, yet he was actually being disregarded like this. If you don't want to anger my ancestor, I'd advise you to obediently stand to the side. Zhongyi didn't give him any face at all. What a joke! As a member of a forbidden land, did he need to take other saints seriously? The Star Sand Saint flew into a rage. He humphed and said, "Don't use the name of a Saint King to pressure me. Do you think that I don't have a Saint King backing me?" In the past few years, there had been many forbidden lands that had formed an alliance with Ling Han, and the one that represented Ling Han was the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy. No matter how powerful the Open Cloud's Forbidden Land was, could it possibly oppose so many forbidden lands at the same time? You're becoming more and more muddle-headed, Zhongyi said with a cold chuckle. The Open Cloud's Forbidden Land was far too isolated. So how could he know that Ling Han had once displayed his invincible might and killed two Saint Kings? In his eyes, the Star Sand Saint was merely making empty threats. The Star Sand Saint really wanted to slap him to death. However, forming an alliance with so many forbidden lands didn't mean that he could attack them without any qualms. Rather, when he was in the right, the other forbidden lands would all support him. After all, he wasn't Ling Han. The Star Sand Saint trembled in fury, yet he still suppressed his anger. With a wave of his sleeve he said, "Get lost. Hand over this despicable brat, and I'll naturally leave," Zhongyi said proudly. If he took Ling Han away this time, the Open Cloud's king would personally descend upon this planet next time, and he would exterminate all living beings on this planet. There was a cold glint in the Star Sand Saint's eyes, and he suddenly leaped in front of Zhongyi. Was he forcing him to kill a saint? "Get out of my way," the Empress said in a delicate voice as she walked over. Her steps were graceful, yet they also exuded a boundless domineering aura. Reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 1630. The Empress walked over to the Star Sand Saint. Pa! With a wave of her hand, the Star Sand Saint was pushed to the side. She was far too powerful now, and even the Star Sand Saint was no match for her. However, Zhongyi thought that the Star Sand Saint's legs had softened at the sight of a beautiful woman, and he couldn't help but chuckle coldly. "Are you delivering yourself to me? Fine, I'll take you with me after I capture you." If a small saint wanted to flee, it was basically impossible for a medium saint to catch up to him. However, if he insisted on battling, how could he not capture him? "How dare you speak rudely to my husband?" The Empress wore a proud expression. "Who do you think you are?" The Empress was far too beautiful, and her charm was far too mesmerizing. Even when she was angry, she could still move one's heart. Although Zhongyi was the one being insulted, he didn't have any temper at all. In fact, he wanted nothing more than to kneel down and lick the Empress' toes. His heart immediately jolted. He was a saint, so how could his heart be so easily swayed? This woman's beauty was far too astonishing. He didn't reply. Instead, he suddenly shot out a palm to capture the Empress. "How dare you?" The Empress roared as she also shot out a palm strike. Boom! Her slender hand unleashed a burst of sword light that soared into the sky. Pooh! Zhongyi was instantly sliced in half, from his left shoulder to his right rib. Blood gushed out like a fountain, and his upper body was also slowly sliding down. His face was filled with astonishment, And he still hadn't come to his senses. How could she be so powerful? He was a medium saint, yet he couldn't even take a single strike from the Empress? He hurriedly channeled his origin power and life force to stabilize the two halves of his body and lock in his vitality. However, the Empress' sword strike was imbued with terrifying destructive power. Even if he were to ignite his life force, it was useless. His vitality was rapidly being wiped away. Zhong Ye's face turned green with fright. For an ordinary person, having their body sliced in half like this would definitely result in death. However, it was a piece of cake for a saint. As long as he reconnected his body and channeled his origin power, he would be able to recover in no time. However, things were completely different from what he had imagined. There was a terrifying murderous aura surging through his body, and its destructive power was far greater than his recovery speed. If this continued, he would be destroyed in both body and spirit. Zhong Yi was horrified, and his sense of superiority from the Forbidden Land instantly vanished. He hurriedly ejected his divine soul out of his body. He couldn't keep this physical body anymore, as it would only cause his divine soul to decay. He had to seize another body and be reborn. When his spirit flew out of his body, he saw that the beautiful Empress, who had caused his Tao heart to waver, was staring at him with a murderous look. She raised her slender hand again. Pa! His spirit was destroyed without any suspense. Instantly, a rain of blood fell from the sky, lamenting the fall of a saint. He felt wronged. Initially, if a saint wanted to escape, there was still a very, very high chance that he could do so. But who asked him to look down on the Empress too much? He even had delusional thoughts of capturing the Empress and keeping her as his mistress. Thus, he naturally could only suffer the consequences of his own actions. The Star Sand Saint and the others all wore strange expressions. Sure enough, people who weren't part of the same family wouldn't be part of the same family. Previously, Ling Han had killed a saint, and now it was the Empress' turn to kill a saint. It was as if saints were nothing more than pigs in their eyes. However, since the Empress dared to kill him, she definitely had something to rely on. Ling Han could still show his might again, and he had the strength to kill a Saint King. Then there was no need to worry. Ling Han was smiling on the surface, but he was gritting his teeth in his heart. The next time, it would definitely be the Open Clouds King who would personally come. But he couldn't use the power boost from the Black Tower anymore. What was he supposed to do? Thankfully, even if there was the existence of the link of karma, and the Open Clouds King immediately discovered Zhong Ye's death, Zhong Yi had used 4 or 5 years' time to rush here, which meant that the Open Clouds' Forbidden Land was very far away from them. He still had 4 or 5 years' time. Ling Han propped his chin on his hand. If he went to seek help from the Saint Kings of those Forbidden Lands, that would be equivalent to telling them that he no longer had any trump cards that could kill Saint Kings. Then some Forbidden Lands might still be quite obedient, but some, you can do it this way. 4 years later, I will hold another treasure exchange and invite all those Saint Kings. In fact, I can even use the excuse of discussing martial art to keep them here for 8 to 10 years. Then, when the Open Clouds King arrives, those Saint Kings will naturally act on my behalf. That's right, let's do it this way. There was a large number of juniors that had stayed behind in the Forbidden Lands of the Academy, and Ling Han only needed to pass on a message through them and invite those Saint Kings to reconvene on Wood Figure Planet 4 years later. On the other hand, Ling Han also began to cultivate hard. After all, inviting those Saint Kings over could only be used to stabilize the situation. But what was truly reliable was naturally his own strength. It was impossible to become a Saint King within 4 years, but it shouldn't be difficult to become a saint. The Empress was a very good example. As long as he advanced into the saint tier, his strength would definitely advance by leaps and bounds, and matching great saints would definitely be a matter of course. At that time, even if he couldn't defeat them, he would at least be able to escape. He was sure that the Open Clouds King wouldn't dare to do anything to the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy. Otherwise, if he were to madly seek revenge, unless the Open Clouds King never left his nest in this lifetime, and every member of the Zhong clan hid inside like a coward, the open clouds forbidden land would similarly be met with great misfortune. After reaching a certain level, one would have to abide by certain rules, and one's family shouldn't be harmed. Along with Ling Han's invitation, the news of Zhong Ye's death also reached the ears of the various forbidden lands. Apart from sighing with emotion at Ling Han's fiery temper, those Saint Kings were even more certain that Ling Han still had a Saint King level trump card. Otherwise, how could he have dared to act like this? Inside the Black Tower, everyone was cultivating hard, and their strength was also advancing by leaps and bounds. In reality, as long as the Empress advanced into the Great Saint tier, she would be able to open the doors to the Celestial Realm, and the time for them to enter the Celestial Realm had already entered a countdown. A year and a half passed, and the number of Ling Han's heavenly bodies had reached as many as 8 million. 3 years later, the number of his heavenly bodies had reached 9,999,999. Just like the Empress, the speed of his rapid advancement finally came to a halt, and he had encountered a true bottleneck. He didn't even have time to be lovey-dovey with the Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Maiden, and he spent his entire day comprehending Tao under the reincarnation tree. In the end, he was dragged away by the Empress and forced to do it again. He could cultivate, but he couldn't forget to feed his wife. This time, Ling Han went into seclusion for half a year before he managed to form the last star. 10 million stars, the peak stage of the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier. He entered into closed-door cultivation once more. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, the experts of the various forbidden grounds had arrived successively, and they'd come to participate in the grand event of the Tao discussion and the exchange of treasures at Ling Han's invitation. Ling Han ended his seclusion. He had already touched the boundary of the Genesis tier, and he believed that it wouldn't be long before he could truly take this step. He called the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire over, and had him preach to the many Saint Kings in order to stall for time. Because theoretically, the Open Clouds King could appear at any time. It could be now, or it could be a year later, or 10 years later. However, he believed that it would not be long. 2 saints had died in a row. How could he tolerate this? When the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire went up the stage, many of the Saint Kings were shocked. This child who was not even 10 years old had come to preach to them. But they immediately discovered that this child was actually a saint, and a medium saint at that. When the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire spoke, many Saint Kings could only listen respectfully. Every word was a gem, and every sentence was close to the Tao. Chapter 1632. Ling Han took a step and entered the galaxy. He could not undergo the tribulation on Wood Figure Planet, or the entire planet would be destroyed by the heavenly tribulation. The moment he entered the galaxy, Ling Han sensed an incredibly powerful aura. A Saint King, the Open Clouds King, had not gone far, but was spying nearby. Despicable brat! The moment the Open Clouds King saw Ling Han, he was instantly enraged. Zhong Badu had died at this brat's hands. Coming to die. Kwang. However, the Open Clouds King had not moved yet when he saw the dense thunderclouds. A bolt of lightning had already struck down, turning into a lightning giant that launched an attack on Ling Han. He came to an abrupt halt. With his strength, he could naturally tell that Ling Han was undergoing the tribulation of a saint, and was advancing from the Eternal River tier to the Genesis tier. But the problem was this commotion was too great, comparable to the tribulation of a great saint. How was this possible? The tribulation of a small saint was actually on par with the tribulation of a great saint. What kind of freak was this? The Open Clouds King dared not move. If he attacked Ling Han at this time, he would definitely be drawn into the heavenly tribulation, and the Saint King tribulation magnified on this basis. The Open Clouds King dared not imagine how terrifying that would be. But one thing was certain, and that was that it was enough to kill him. To kill a small saint, he had to throw himself in as well? That was something only an idiot would do. Furthermore, he did not believe that Ling Han could survive this kind of heavenly tribulation. What small saint in this world was so awesome, possessing the strength to rival a great saint? Wang. Multiple golden paths spread out into the galaxy. The Saint Kings of the various forbidden lands also appeared, watching Ling Han undergo the tribulation. Old Freak Zhong, a Saint King, greeted the Open Clouds King. The Open Clouds King was on full alert, nodding at the other. However, he immediately received a divine sense transmission, allowing him to instantly grasp a great deal of information. Ling Han had killed saints, and not just one. There were even Saint Kings among them. From the news that came from the Netherworld, Ling Han had even killed many heaven demons. This brat could merge the natural laws of the two realms, and as such obtained many restricted lands. In the future, he might become the core to merge the two realms. Taking a step back, even if he didn't merge the two realms, he could still open the gate to the celestial realm and bring many forbidden lands back to the celestial realm. He was shocked at first, but he immediately sneered. It was obvious that Ling Han had invited so many Saint Kings over to deal with him. In that case, the other party should not have the means to kill a holy king. His eyes flickered wildly, wondering if he should take a huge risk and attack Ling Han after he transcended the heavenly tribulation, obtaining all of his secrets in one fell swoop. But the problem was, what if Ling Han still had a trick up his sleeve, and everything was just him doing it on purpose, and he actually still had the means to kill a Saint King? That would be terrible. Not only the Open Clouds King, but a considerable number of Saint Kings were also secretly pondering this possibility. After all, as long as they continued to maintain a good relationship with Ling Han, they would all be able to enter into the celestial realm, and they could all cultivate to the level of Saint King in the broken ancient realm. After entering into the celestial realm, advancing into the Severing Mundane tier was definitely not difficult. Severing Mundane Ancestor, indestructible through the ages, their longevity as long as the heavens. On one hand, they could become even stronger, and on the other, they could become celestials and not perish. Both were very difficult to choose. More importantly, if this was a trap, not only would they not be able to become celestials, they might even die. They were so conflicted. But at least for now, no one dared make a move. Whoever dared interfere with this kind of heavenly tribulation would die. Ling Han was also slightly anxious. His present strength was indeed enough to contend with a great saint-level heavenly tribulation. But the problem was that he still wanted to temper his godly bones. This meant that not only could he not fight back, even his defenses would have to drop to rock bottom. He only hesitated slightly, and then made up his mind to fight with everything he had. Presently, he needed strength even more urgently. A pack of wolves was eyeing him covetously, and only powerful strength would be able to protect himself. Boom! Ling Han shattered his own godly bones, and underwent tempering under the heavenly tribulation. He's dead. A few people exclaimed in shock, feeling that it was a great pity. Some were feeling that it was a pity that after Ling Han had died, no one would be able to bring them into the celestial realm. And some were sighing that Ling Han's soul had been destroyed in the heavenly tribulation. Then, his secrets would also be buried in the heaven and earth with him. However, they immediately discovered that the aura that belonged to Ling Han had not disappeared, especially the Open Clouds King. He could easily capture the threads of karma on Ling Han's body, and it was still connected to the Zhong clan. He wasn't dead. He's actually tempering his godly bones in the heavenly tribulation. No wonder this brat's physique is so frightening. So this is how he managed to carve so many killing formations in his body. But this is risking his life. A mere small saint facing the heavenly tribulation of a great saint is already fraught with danger in the first place. And not only is he not resisting with his full strength, he is instead harming himself. Is he seeking death? For the sake of becoming stronger, this brat is really going all out. The Saint Kings were all stunned. This kind of determination moved even them. The Empress, the Heavenly Phoenix Maiden, the large black dog, and the others also arrived in the galaxy. They were all filled with confidence in Ling Han. This brat is incredible. The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Even he, an Immortal Palace tier elite, was moved. Though he was also known as a prodigy, if he was compared to Ling Han at the same cultivation level, he would probably be much inferior. Of course, it's all taught by Grandpa Dog. The large black dog said proudly. Schwa. The Empress struck out with her palm, which turned into a flash of sword chi, scaring the large black dog into hurriedly dodging. That woman, don't think that you can mess around just because you're pretty. If you piss Grandpa Dog off, I'll bite you all the same. The large black dog barked. The Empress's battle prowess was too frightening. She had actually shaved off a tuft of hair on his tail, which made his heart ache terribly. He had never suffered such a great loss before. Yet the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire only stared at Ling Han and murmured, "Breaking through with 10 million stars. Even in the celestial realm, there are not many that can do that. At least, as far as I know, there are only a few holy sons and holy daughters of the great sex. But here, there are actually 2 people that have done it." To Ling Han, this was a great danger. The heavenly tribulation was too frightening. In a single instant, it had risen from the tribulation of a small saint to the level of tribulation of a great saint. This required Ling Han to use his full strength to be able to match it. But now he had given up on resisting it, and had even dispelled his own defenses. This caused him to suffer greatly. His godly bones were shattered by a single strike from the lightning giant. Under the pressure of the power of a great saint, his physique was really not strong enough. His godly bones that had been shattered in the first place were practically reduced to slag, and were now a serious threat to Ling Han's life. If this continued, he would definitely die. Ling Han channeled a drop of indestructible true fluid, allowing his body to quickly reconstruct itself. This was not tempering his body, but rather seeking death. He began to actively resist the heavenly tribulation. Since the heavenly tribulation was so strong, there was actually no need for him to shatter his godly bones to accept the tempering. That was because the heavenly tribulation was strong enough, and even if he was in his perfect state, he would still be able to receive sufficient tempering. He released a battle cry, and used one celestial technique after another to face the heavenly tribulation. Why was the heavenly tribulation of him and the Empress so fierce? Logically speaking, even when he had broken through from the pinnacle level to the next major level in the past, it had not been so exaggerated. I'm strong, but that's because I've put in enough effort. The heaven and earth should reward me for this, and not punish me. This should be because he and the Empress had both merged the regulations of the 2 realms. Ling Han suddenly had an epiphany. In essence, the ancient realm had been divided into 2 worlds, and they were incompatible with each other. Though he had merged the regulations of the 2 realms, and had become complete in his body, the regulations of the netherworld would still be viewed as an enemy by the immortal realm. In the heaven and earth of the immortal realm, Ling Han was like an invasion from the netherworld, and naturally had to be eliminated at all costs. Chapter 1633. Of course, the heaven and earth were also inexorably restricted. Otherwise, what descended now would not be a great saint tribulation, but a saint-king tribulation. A great saint that had merged the regulations of the 2 realms could blast open the doors to the celestial realm. And now it was a great saint tribulation. There seemed to be some kind of connection. Ling Han understood, but this kind of understanding could not help him pass the heavenly tribulation. He roared endlessly, and used celestial techniques with ease. Now, though he had not passed the heavenly tribulation, he already possessed the power and comprehension of a small saint. In his hands, celestial techniques finally shone brilliantly. However, the lightning giants formed from the heavenly tribulation were undying and indestructible. They would reform after being shattered, and their numbers would only increase, not decrease. Similar to the Empress's experience, when the lightning giants reached 50, they finally experienced a qualitative change. Ling Han could not hold on anymore. He spat out a mouthful of blood when he was blasted in unison, and his godly bones were instantly shattered. Being attacked by 50 great saints at once, what kind of concept was that? In any case, the Star Sand Saint's face was pale. He estimated that he could only survive this kind of battle if he reached the middle stage of the Great Saint tier. But he was presently only in the early stage of the Great Saint tier. If he was allowed to pass this kind of heavenly tribulation, he would definitely die. First there was the Empress, and then there was Ling Han. Why was this family so freakish? Even a small saint was so powerful. If he became a Saint King, who in this world could match him? The Star Sand Saint was not the only one who had this thought. The Saint Kings of the other forbidden lands also had grave expressions. But the far-sighted Saint Kings did not think too seriously, because their target was the celestial realm. In the celestial realm, no matter how strong you were, so what? Cultivation level was the true path. Ling Han channeled another drop of indestructible true fluid to control his injuries. Using it continuously for a short period of time, the effects of the indestructible true fluid decreased sharply. He humphed and suddenly 4 arms appeared from his body. Immovable deity metal body mystical power. The name of this celestial technique was a little long, but its might was indeed domineering. In an instant, it caused Ling Han's battle prowess to increase by a considerable number of times. He wielded the divine demon sword in one hand, and the broken wooden sword in the other. He used the banishing technique with one hand, channeled the annihilating dragon star arrow with another, used the flying dragon shadow hands with one hand, and used the tide of the ages with the other. A lightning giant rushed over, but Ling Han pressed down on it, and it suddenly disappeared. He pressed down with his other hand, and the other lightning giant immediately disintegrated, as if it was going to disappear from this world and return to the past. At this moment, the godly bones on Ling Han's body were also emitting a golden light. Dense runes appeared on his bones. This was a sign that his godly bones were evolving in a stronger direction. He roared, his battle intent boiling. He no longer defended passively, but took the initiative to attack. Puff under the slash of the divine demon sword. Even the lightning giant was sliced in half. It would take a few breaths' time before it could completely reform. The destructive power of the divine demon sword was evident. All the Saint Kings felt their scalps go numb. At their level, there was really nothing that could surprise them. But now, all of them wanted to take some medicine to calm down. Too strong. How could there possibly be such a freak? A small saint fighting against a great saint. This was something that had never happened before. Yet they did not know that there had already been an empress who had accomplished such a magnificent feat before this. The Open Clouds King's expression was even more solemn. He possessed the bloodline of the bronze dragon, and could clearly sense that there was the power of time on Ling Han's body. He couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. If he could refine Ling Han, then wouldn't he be able to obtain a fragment of the great Tao of the regulations of time? Wanting to directly comprehend the regulations of time of the heaven and earth was far too difficult. It could only be done through some natural treasures, such as single flower or crystal of time, or by refining a person who also cultivated the power of time, and extracting a fragment of the regulations of time from the other's body. Actually, in the celestial realm, this was also the path that the majority of elites chose. After all, there were too few natural treasures. Through refining someone who also cultivated the power of time, it was equivalent to gathering a little to make a lot, and using blood and bones to pave a path that led to Supreme Celestial King tier. In the eyes of the Open Clouds King, Ling Han was no longer a person, but rather a cultivation resource. Ling Han battled until he was in a frenzy. The indestructible heaven scroll circulated in his body, and his whole body radiated with golden light. Innumerable patterns appeared, and even an immortal palace tier elite, like the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire, was completely unable to comprehend it, and could only stare in shock. This is. Yet the large black dog became excited, and continuously jumped up and down on the ground. His eyes were about to pop out, and he slapped his own head in a frenzy. Why can't I remember? It's clearly incredibly familiar. No one noticed that multiple golden patterns were also flashing on the large black dog's body, and were actually somewhat similar to Ling Han's. And the large black dog himself did not notice that he was currently in an extreme frenzy. His godly bones clanged. The might of this heavenly tribulation was too strong. Even if Ling Han did not shatter his own godly bones, the effects of the tempering he received were not the slightest bit weaker. He had officially advanced into the height of level 18 godly metal, and was still continuing to improve. As his defenses improved, Ling Han also became more and more relaxed. One celestial technique after another was used in his hands, and their might also became stronger and stronger. The sixth level of the Black Tower has opened. Small Tower's voice rang out in Ling Han's mind. The first 5 levels corresponded to the power of the 5 elements, and the sixth level was lightning. Boom! Inside the Black Tower, purple divine lightning appeared, and battered fields of godly medicines. This was destructive, and 99% of the godly medicines instantly died. But there was also an extremely small number of godly medicines that survived, and their quality improved by a whole level. 1 in a million, the best of the best. The reincarnation tree was also heavily wounded. Half of its trunk had been forcefully hacked off, and its vitality was practically extinguished. Its leaves had all withered, and only the core area maintained a tiny bit of vitality. This celestial tree had been hastened by the Black Tower. Due to excessive enthusiasm, it would never be able to grow into a true reincarnation tree. But now it was trading death for life under the purple lightning. If it could survive this tribulation, it would be able to start anew and grow into a true reincarnation tree. Life was born from death. Ling Han's divine sense swept out, and he understood everything that had happened inside the Black Tower. He couldn't help but come to a realization. The tribulation lightning was clearly violent and filled with killing intent, but within this killing intent, there was a flourishing vitality. He raised his head to look at the thunderclouds. It had always been people who passively faced tribulation. Had no one ever thought of entering the depths of the thunderclouds? And what was there? At the end of death was vitality, so what was behind this destructive tribulation lightning? Once this thought appeared, Ling Han could no longer hold it in. With a battle cry, he charged towards the thunderclouds. Crazy! When the Saint Kings saw this, they all paled in shock. No one had ever thought of entering the depths of the thunderclouds. This was wrong. Many elites had thought of this, but every person who had thought of this and dared to do so had died. From ancient times until now, who knew how many elites had fallen because of this, and naturally no one dared to do so in the future. This was a dead end. But Ling Han actually took this step again. Reading on a cell phone was more refreshing. Chapter 1634. Ling Han charged towards the thunderclouds. Hong hong hong. There were originally a total of 50 lightning giants, and the heavenly tribulation only maintained this scale, not increasing any further. However, following Ling Han's sudden advance, it was as if the heaven and earth had been enraged. Quang! Another bolt of lightning blasted out, forming a new lightning giant. There was more than one. Quang 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 lightning flashed, and the number of giants increased. Some brandished spears of lightning, some wielded swords of lightning, and some directly threw punches, shooting out blazing white lightning. Ling Han was unafraid. The terrifying power of lightning was circulating in the Black Tower, making it seem as if he had also fused with the regulations of lightning, assimilating with them. These bolts of lightning shot over, yet they were unable to wound him in the slightest. At this moment Ling Han was equivalent to the embodiment of regulations of lightning, but was also above it, because the regulations in the Black Tower were clearly higher than those of the immortal realm. How is this possible? All the Saint Kings exclaimed in shock. Even if Ling Han could be powerful enough to destroy all these lightning giants, they would not be so shocked. But this scene now was too shocking. This was the heavenly tribulation. Who would it give face to? But Ling Han charged straight into the deepest part of the heavenly tribulation, provoking the heaven and earth. Quang quang quang. The heavenly tribulation became more and more violent. This was the might of the heaven and earth, and would not allow anyone to provoke it. The number of lightning giants continued to increase, reaching more than 300. By this time, even the Saint Kings were terrified. If it were them, facing over 300 great saints, they would frown, and only those peak stage Saint Kings would be unafraid. But if it were them, the might of the heavenly tribulation would skyrocket, turning into countless peak stage Saint Kings attacking them from all sides. Ling Han advanced bravely. Perhaps he would only have this one chance. This was the first time the 6th level of the Black Tower had been opened, and a large amount of regulations of lightning surged in, allowing him to temporarily ignore the heavenly tribulation. but it would definitely not happen again in future. He charged into the thunderclouds. It was pitch black, and if it were not for the blazing white lightning flickering, he would almost suspect that he had entered some kind of danger zone that had sealed off all his senses. Ling Han continued to advance, and the strength of the lightning giants was terrifyingly increasing. They were no longer suppressing him with numbers, but rather with cultivation level. A Saint King level lightning giant had appeared. If he did not have the help of the Black Tower, no matter how freakish Ling Han was, he would not be able to match this kind of opponent. But now he directly ignored it. So what if the opponent bombarded him madly? He walked on freely. No one in the outside world could tell what was happening in the thunderclouds. They only knew that since the thunderclouds did not disperse, it meant that Ling Han was still alive. Ling Han quickened his pace. Half a day had already passed, so he had to hurry. The path ahead suddenly became clear, and Ling Han stopped in his tracks in shock. In the deepest part of the thunderclouds, there was actually an altar. Is the heavenly tribulation man-made? He approached it, but he continuously shook his head. This altar didn't seem to be man-made, but rather natural. There was a mysterious force that molded it into this shape. Perhaps, all the altars in the world were built this way because of this influence. The altar was very simple. It was no more than 3 meters tall, and it was hard to tell what material it was made of. However, there was a groove in the center of the altar, and one could feel a liquid rolling in it, exuding an indescribable fragrance. That's heavenly tribulation fluid, Small Tower said. Brat, you've struck it rich. The Black Tower has opened the 6th level, allowing you to temporarily resonate with the great Tao of lightning and barge into this place. Otherwise, you would only be qualified to obtain the heavenly tribulation fluid of this realm when you become a Saint King. Ling Han nodded. The ancient realm had its own restrictions. The strongest power in this realm was Saint Kings. Thus, when he became a Saint King, with his strength, he would be able to defeat all Saint Kings, and similarly charge into the depths of the thunderclouds. However, this was only limited to the ancient realm. If he broke through to Saint King in the celestial realm, then it would be different. What benefits does the heavenly tribulation fluid have? Ling Han asked. So that you can comprehend the great Tao of lightning, Small Tower said. Doesn't the Black Tower have lightning element regulations? Ling Han was curious. That's different. That's incorporated by the heavenly venerable tier, gathering the regulations of the celestial realm. Even I can only use it. If you want to comprehend it, that's no different from directly coming into contact with the regulations of lightning of the celestial realm. It won't bring any increase in effect, Small Tower explained. Perhaps it was because the Black Tower had opened another level, that it was in a much better mood. It actually did not act Sundara for a long time. Realization dawned on Ling Han, and he quickly walked towards the altar. Xiao, 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 multiple lightning giants appeared, and in the end, they even reached the peak stage of Saint King tier, wanting to blast Ling Han to death. Hello, heavenly tribulation, goodbye, heavenly tribulation, Ling Han said smilingly. He weaved through the air, as if he was untouchable by all techniques. The attacks of the lightning giants did not have the slightest effect on him. He arrived at the edge of the altar, and hurriedly extracted the heavenly tribulation fluid from the groove, storing it into the Black Tower. This was too precious. In this lifetime, he could only obtain it 2 or 3 times. He could do it again when he became a Saint King in the ancient realm. His defenses were too strong, and when he became a 9th heaven celestial king in future, he would similarly be invincible and obtain the heavenly tribulation fluid again. But by that time, would he still need the heavenly tribulation fluid? There was not much heavenly tribulation fluid, only about 1 liter. It was as blue as the ocean, and exuded a strange fragrance that gladdened the heart and refreshed the mind. He could feel that there were patterns of great Tao surging within it, as if it contained the heavens of all ages. Ling Han did not have much. This could be slowly studied in the future. He stared at the altar. There were similarly innumerable patterns of great Tao on it, and this was definitely related to the formation of the heavenly tribulation. If he could comprehend it, then wouldn't that mean that he had grasped the power of heavenly punishment? He had to be careful, But not long after, this altar mysteriously disappeared, and the thunderclouds in the surroundings also disappeared without a trace. Ling Han discovered that he had appeared in the galaxy. Half a day had passed, and the heavenly tribulation had dissipated. What a pity! Ling Han couldn't help but feel that it was a pity. If he had enough time, he could have engraved the patterns of Great Tao on the altar. It was fine even if he could not comprehend it at the moment. He could slowly comprehend it in the future. Ling Han, what did you discover in the thunderclouds? A great number of Saint Kings crowded over. They were all very curious, and some were even so excited that they could not speak coherently. Entering into the depths of the thunderclouds was something that had never happened before. It was naturally impossible for Ling Han to tell them the truth. They were merely allies, and he could not possibly let these people know the secret of the heavenly tribulation fluid. Just more heavenly tribulations, he said. Though the various Saint Kings did not believe him, there was nothing they could do, since Ling Han had already said so. If they continued to press him for an answer, they would have to risk becoming enemies with Ling Han. Who knew if he still had any trump cards in his hands? Even if he didn't, as long as they could not kill him, it would not be easy for a small saint to escape. Furthermore, once such a monster advanced into medium saint or great saint, he would be able to easily slaughter a Saint King with his own strength. Thus, without the certainty of being able to kill him in a single strike, who would want to start a battle with Ling Han? Chapter 1636. If he had killed Ling Han with a single strike, blood would have rained down from the sky. The 18 Saint Kings were all confused. That was their sure kill attack. Even if Ling Han hid in a spatial god artifact, it would still be difficult for him to escape death. But now the surroundings were terrifyingly empty. It was too unbelievable. Inside the Black Tower, Ling Han was also slightly astonished, because these 18 Saint Kings were all completely unfamiliar. How many Saint Kings are there in the world? Ling Han was sure that these Saint Kings had all changed their appearances, and their goal was to leave a path of retreat for him. If they failed to kill Ling Han, then Ling Han would not be able to know who he was, and he would still be able to board Ling Han's ship and sail into the celestial realm. He snorted coldly in his heart. How could there be such an easy thing? You can change your appearance, but not your aura. Every cultivator had their own unique aura. Normally, they could control it and not leak it. But once they attacked, especially with their full strength, it was impossible to hide it. Ling Han had already memorized the auras of these Saint Kings. The next time he met them, he only needed to force them to make a move, and he would be able to distinguish whether they were the attackers today. Just you wait. It wouldn't take too long. Just like the Empress, after he had completely consolidated his cultivation level, he would be able to match the peak stage of the Great Saint with the strength of a peak stage small saint. Then, when he had advanced into the medium saint tier, he wouldn't have to be afraid, even if he were to face a Saint King. Even if he could not defeat a peak stage Saint King, by relying on the strength of his physique, he did not need to be afraid at all. All the Saint Kings were unwilling to leave, and sat cross-legged in the surrounding void. It was impossible for this person to suddenly disappear. Ling Han must have used some kind of method to conceal himself. Most likely an immortal artifact. I don't believe you can hide forever. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, a year had already passed. It was as if Ling Han and the others had completely disappeared from this part of the world. The Open Clouds King was also one of the 16 Saint Kings who had launched a sneak attack. He had not discovered the appearance of the threat of karma, and it could be concluded that Ling Han was definitely still here. To a holy king, waiting for tens of thousands of years was nothing. He was determined to wait until Ling Han appeared. However, as time passed, the sage kings who remained on Wood Figure Planet naturally discovered that Ling Han had not appeared on Cloud Apex Planet, and they all came looking for him. Go! The expressions of the 16 Saint Kings changed, and they quickly left. If all the Saint Kings were here, then as long as the Saint Kings who had rushed over were eliminated, the remaining people would all be the ones who had ambushed Ling Han. It would be too easy to distinguish them. Right now they didn't even know where Ling Han was. Naturally, They didn't want to expose their true identities, so they immediately turned around and left. A few days later, they showed up with their original faces and pretended that they had just found out that something had happened. In the end, all the saints left, and the starry sky became dark, cold, and lonely again. Inside the Black Tower, Small Tower brought Ling Han a piece of good news. The reincarnation tree had sprouted a new branch and could be used again. After experiencing death and rebirth, the reincarnation tree had also received a huge upgrade. The number of people who could comprehend under the tree at the same time could reach 100, and 1 day of cultivation was equivalent to 100 years, which was equivalent to speeding up the flow of time by more than 30,000 times. Ling Han was overjoyed. Without the help of the reincarnation tree, his grasp of regulations in this year was pitifully slow. He hurriedly comprehended under the tree, and the others did the same. Only after losing it did they realize how great the help of the reincarnation tree was. A mere half a year later, Ling Han truly reached the peak stage of the small saint tier. This also meant that if he comprehended in the outside world, he would need close to 20,000 years to complete it. The value of the reincarnation tree could be imagined. After stabilizing his cultivation level, Ling Han was in no hurry to break through to the medium saint tier. If he didn't have enough accumulation, forcefully breaking through would be a dead-end death. And if he wanted to have enough accumulation, he would either have to settle for countless years and make a breakthrough, or he would have to rely on alchemical pills. In this way, he wouldn't have to completely absorb his life force when he advanced in cultivation level due to insufficient accumulation. Ling Han naturally chose the latter. Firstly, the former was too slow, and secondly, he was the alchemy emperor. Wouldn't he be an idiot not to take alchemical pills at this time? But everything in the saint level was extremely difficult to grasp. Ling Han was not in a hurry to make his move. Instead, he began to make preparations so that he could first advance into the saint level in alchemy. If a worker wanted to do a good job, he had to first sharpen his tools. Another year later, Ling Han finally stopped his exploration of alchemy. He had the initial confidence that he could concoct saint-grade alchemical pills. But to concoct saint-grade alchemical pills, he needed saintly medicines as the main ingredients. Ling Han did not have many on hand either. In the previous exchange meet, he had only managed to exchange for 3. If I'm lucky, I can concoct 3 cauldrons of saint-grade alchemical pills. Even if I succeed in all of them, there would only be about 10 pills. That's enough. He and the Empress each had 5 pills, and that was enough to support the frightening energy requirements after advancing into the medium saint tier. And once they advanced into the medium saint tier, they would not need to fear saint kings. They could completely loot the various holy lands. Unfortunately, though the reincarnation tree leaf was celestial level, it could only increase one's comprehension, and had almost no effect on increasing one's origin power. Otherwise, Ling Han would not have such a headache. He began to concoct alchemical pills carefully. Because there were only 3 saintly medicines, he definitely could not make any mistakes. 3 months later, Ling Han concocted his first cauldron of alchemical pills. I succeeded, but the quality did not meet my expectations. Ling Han shook his head in slight pity, but he had succeeded in concocting saint-grade alchemical pills on his first try. His alchemy ability was definitely the best in the present immortal realm. Though the bitter alchemy saint had concocted saintly medicines before, he had paid the price of 10 saintly medicines. Furthermore, he could not guarantee that he would succeed every time. Thus, ordinarily, no one would use saintly medicines to concoct alchemical pills. Instead, they would directly consume them. Again, with the experience of one's success, Ling Han was naturally more confident and familiar. Half a year later, he successfully concocted another 2 cauldrons of saint-grade alchemical pills, and the quality of each cauldron was higher than the last. There really isn't enough time, he said ruefully. Presently, he had already advanced into the saint level, and could inscribe saint-level killing formations in his body, but previously, he had first consolidated his cultivation level of small saint, and then studied alchemy and alchemy. He had completely no time to study formations. Thankfully, he had the reincarnation tree. Otherwise, he definitely would not have the time to study formations in the next 100,000 years. Formations can be set aside for now. When I become a medium saint, I will improve my grasp of formations in one go. He and the Empress made their final preparations. Then, they each took 5 saint-grade alchemical pills and appeared in the galaxy. The two of them separated to avoid being accidentally dragged into the other's heavenly tribulation. They did not know what this double heavenly tribulation would taste like, and presumably, no one would want to know. They released their auras. Suddenly, thunderclouds surged over, and the whole universe became very oppressive. When they broke through to small saint, the tribulation they faced was equivalent to the tribulation of a great saint. Now that they were advancing into medium saint, couldn't it be the tribulation of a saint king? Quang. 2 bolts of lightning practically struck at the same time, respectively striking towards Ling Han and the Empress. And in this process, the 2 bolts of lightning had both taken human form. A frightening aura spread out. True enough, they were Saint King tier level. Cell phones read more refreshing. Chapter 1637. The Empress directly summoned her 9 doppelgangers, and they charged toward the heavenly tribulation. She had always been strong and domineering. Now that there were no outsiders here, she naturally didn't have to worry about others knowing her trump cards. She used her full strength right from the start, and suppressed the lightning giant. Even if it was a Saint King, so what? In front of the present Empress, he was no longer high and mighty. Rather, he could stand against her, and even suppress her. Ling Han, on the other hand, did not have it as easy as the Empress. He still had to temper his godly bones. However, the gap between their cultivation levels was too great. He did not dare to shatter his own godly body like he had done in the past. Instead, he guided the power of lightning into his body, and used a more gentle method to temper his godly bones. But if someone were here, they would definitely call him a pervert. How could this be called gentle? That was the attack of a Saint King, and you actually used it to temper your body. Are you tired of living? This husband and wife were definitely freaks among freaks. One could easily transcend the heavenly tribulation, while the other simply turned the heavenly tribulation into a furnace of heaven and earth, using it to temper himself. Unfortunately, this time, Ling Han did not dare to venture deep into the thunderclouds to obtain more heavenly tribulation fluid. His current battle prowess was only comparable to that of an early-stage Saint King. But if he entered the depths of the thunderclouds, not only would there be peak-stage Saint Kings, their numbers would also be terrifying. His current physique was still unable to withstand the bombardment of so many Saint Kings. Perhaps he could try it the next time he broke through to the Great Sage. After the heavenly tribulation, Ling Han and the Empress exchanged a smile. Now, they had enough confidence to face all the powerful enemies of the ancient realm. It was the ancient realm, and not just the immortal realm, because they had both cultivated the regulations of the 2 realms, and had perfectly merged them together. Whether in the immortal realm or the netherworld, they would be able to unleash their full battle prowess. Are we going to deal with those guys immediately? The queen asked. Ling Han thought for a moment and said, No, let's try fusing the laws of the 2 realms first. If the ancient realm is truly able to fuse in our hands, that would be a great merit, and the benefits we would obtain would be indescribably bountiful. In the past, he had come by opening the sky, and received the reward of the heaven and earth. His power was forcibly 3 stars more than that of shattering void tier elites of the same cultivation level. And there were too many small worlds. If you could open them, so could I. But what about the ancient realms? Just one. If opening a small world was already so awesome, then what kind of heaven-defying feat would it be if the 2 worlds were to be merged? The Empress nodded. They were all aspiring to become celestial kings, so the stronger their battle prowess was, the better. The 2 of them entered into the Black Tower. The Empress stabilized her cultivation level, and in addition to stabilizing her cultivation level, Ling Han also had to open up his path of formations. Ling Han had already accumulated enough experience in the Tao of formations. Previously, when he had dispelled the innumerable formations in the world, his foundation had also become incomparably sturdy. On top of that, he often discussed the Tao of formations with the Tranquil Heart Saint. Thus, his understanding of formations was actually not inferior to the Tranquil Heart Saint's. He focused on his studies. Time flowed under the reincarnation tree. 3 years had passed in the outside world, but 100,000 years had passed under the reincarnation tree. Ling Han suddenly opened his eyes. He had already stepped into the Saint realm in the field of array formations. However, the Tranquil Heart Saint was only a small saint. Thus, his understanding of formations had also stopped at the small saint level. Thus, the experience he had imparted to Ling Han was only at the small saint level. To Ling Han, did small saint level formations still have any meaning? No. However, he still had celestial level formations. With his present godly bones, it was naturally impossible for them to withstand the might of celestial level formations. Furthermore, even if they could, he would not be able to activate celestial level formations. He did not have this ability at all. However, celestial level formations could be used as a reference. Wouldn't it be fine to reduce their might a little? He sank into a long period of seclusion again. A year had passed, and he had dismantled a portion of celestial level formations. The strength of their might was comparable to peak stage great saints. Ling Han used the 9 heavens flame as a blade, and carved the formation patterns on his godly bones. If he did not rely on the might of formations, his battle prowess was comparable to the early stage of the great saint tier. And if he activated the formations, he would not have to fear even peak stage saint kings. He broke into a grin. These 4 years had been well spent. After advancing into the saint level, there was basically no alchemical pill in this world that could allow him to rapidly increase his cultivation level. If it were not for the fact that he had cultivated to the pinnacle of the eternal river tier, reaching the peak stage of the low extreme upon breaking through to the Genesis tier, it was likely that he would not have even completely cultivated to the early stage of the small saint tier by now. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden knew. She was still advancing with great difficulty in the early stage of the small saint tier, and had completely lost the momentum of her initial advance. Furthermore, this was still because she had the inheritance of the 3 Phoenix Kings, and her cultivation speed was much faster than that of ordinary saints. Now, if he wanted to increase their cultivation speed explosively, there was only saintly medicine. But how many saintly medicines were there in the whole ancient realm? Ling Han was caught in a dilemma. On one hand, he wanted to cultivate to the level of Saint King in the ancient realm. Then, he would be able to enter into the depths of the thunderclouds again, and obtain the heavenly tribulation fluid. On the other hand, he wanted to enter into the celestial realm as soon as possible. With the abundance of resources in the celestial realm, there would definitely be countless saintly medicines, and even celestial medicines were not impossible. And Ling Han pondered for a while, and made up his mind. Chapter 1638. Half a day later, the might of the lightning finally passed. It was a bit like a heavenly tribulation. Ling Han had already become a pile of mush, and this was still because he had cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll. Otherwise, there was definitely no Genesis tier in this world that would dare directly drink the heavenly tribulation fluid like this. However, after the pain, there were also benefits. The grand Tao of lightning appeared in Ling Han's sea of wisdom. However, it was not complete. It was formed from countless fragments. However, some of the fragments were bigger while others were so small that the naked eye could not catch a glimpse of them. It was normal for it to be incomplete. After all, this was only the thunder tribulation fluid obtained in the ancient realm. Naturally, there was an upper limit. For Ling Han, this was enough. He couldn't grasp the laws of the great Tao that were too profound. Time was limited, so Ling Han chose a large fragment to comprehend. Laws were hard to comprehend to begin with, not to mention that they were incomplete. Therefore, he naturally had to find a relatively complete large fragment to comprehend. For Ling Han's current realm, a large fragment was just right. A day passed, and under the reincarnation tree, Ling Han had also comprehended for a whole century. He opened his eyes, yet didn't have any intention of standing up. He took another small sip of the lightning tribulation liquid. But this time, he had experience, so he drank a lot less. Even so, he was still tossed around quite badly. Take the divine demon sword for example. Even though it hadn't become a celestial tool yet, its destructive power was so powerful that even severing mundane tier grand elders couldn't underestimate it. It was the same for the lightning tribulation liquid. Even though Ling Han only drank a tiny bit, its destructive power was still incomparably berserk. A day later, Ling Han took another sip. Under the reincarnation tree, he split the heavenly tribulation fluid into several hundred portions. Only after an entire year had passed did he finish drinking all of the heavenly tribulation fluid. His great Tao of lightning also improved by leaps and bounds. World-extinguishing thunder. Lightning. Ling Han had obtained 2 mystic arts in total, and they could also be considered as celestial arts. This was because he had a feeling that as long as he unlocked the upper limits of his realm, these 2 arts would be strengthened and continue to increase in power. The world-extinguishing thunder was a little like the power of thunder that he had obtained from observing the heavenly tribulation. However, observing was just an imitation, but it was different now. He had truly obtained the core power of the heavenly tribulation. Lightning could destroy the world and punish on behalf of the heavens. Even a saint king had to revere it. This could be used on its own, or it could be fused into the lightning sword technique to replace the original power of lightning, raising its prowess to another level. And lightning flash could make him as fast as the lightning tribulation. What does that mean? The speed of the heavenly tribulation was so fast that no one could dodge it. They could only take it head-on. But Ling Han had cultivated to the extreme. Whether it was chasing after an opponent or getting rid of a strong enemy, it was a piece of cake for him. I can't maintain this speed for long, Ling Han muttered to himself. But it's enough to chase and escape. Actually, this is a bit similar to the thunderclap ninth heaven, but I don't know how many times more powerful it is. Now to the 2-realm battlefield. If the open clouds king chases after me, I can use him as an example. However, ever since I killed Zhong Badu, I have already undergone 2 heavenly tribulations, and the karmic thread should have disappeared. His thread of karma had disappeared, but the Empress's hadn't. She had only endured 1 heavenly tribulation after killing Zhong Yi. Ho ho, open clouds king, do you dare to come? Ling Han exited the Black Tower, unfurled a golden path, and headed towards Cloud Apex Planet. He very soon arrived, and immediately received a piece of good news. The Rain Emperor was about to break through. Saint Tyr. The Rain Emperor faced the heavenly tribulation in the galaxy. He was very strained. On one hand, he was the same as Ling Han and the Empress because he had fused the regulations of the 2 realms. It was clearly only a small saint tribulation, yet its might could rival the tribulation of a great saint. But the Rain Emperor had not cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll, nor had he cultivated the 9 deaths heaven art. Without a celestial king technique to protect himself, he was naturally on the brink of death. But the Rain Emperor's tenacity was extraordinarily astonishing. He could not be beaten down no matter what, and could always find a sliver of hope in the midst of despair. He managed to endure this half a day, and successfully advanced into the Genesis tier. Furthermore, his accumulation of origin power soared to the peak stage of the small saint tier. Only the 3 of them could do this. Even Ding Ping and Zhu Yao, these 2 disciples that were deeply valued by Ling Han, did not have such astonishing natural talent. They had also formed about 5 million stars, but they had already stagnated for a very, very long time. It was probably very difficult for them to advance any further. Ling Han, the Empress, and the Rain Emperor entered the 2-realm battlefield at the same time. If they could promote the fusion of the 2 realms, then they would all be rewarded by the heaven and earth. They naturally would not let go of this kind of benefit. But no one had experience in fusing the 2 realms, so they could only explore it themselves. As the 3 of them discussed, they tried various methods. Gradually, they also gained experience, and felt that the heaven and earth of the 2 realms were calling out to them, as if it was expressing its desire to them. True enough, the 2 realms were indeed developing in the direction of fusion, but now destruction and creation were opposing each other. The speed of this fusion was frighteningly slow. According to the normal process, it was possible that the reincarnation tree would have normally grown to its limit, but the two realms were still slowly dawdling. The three of them acted as the core, and with themselves as the bridge, they connected the two realms. Suddenly, three pillars of light soared into the sky above the two-realm battlefield. Whether it was the immortal realm or the netherworld, they could clearly see that the heaven and earth that were close to this area were trembling, as if a shocking and massive change was about to occur. The two realms were fusing at an accelerated rate. Ling Han and the others exchanged a look, and all showed expressions of pleasant surprise. Because they were acting as the bridge, one hand was connected to the netherworld, and the other was connected to the immortal realm. The regulations of the two realms flowed in their bodies, causing their comprehension of cultivation level to rapidly increase, and the accumulation of origin power was also increasing. Every breath, a star would be born in their Dantian galaxy. Even if there was no reward from the heaven and earth after fusing the two realms, this benefit was still great enough. Just at this moment, a figure tore through the space and arrived, exuding endless might. The expressions of Ling Han and the others changed drastically. This person was too strong, actually giving them a feeling that they were completely unable to match him. Without another word, Ling Han grabbed the Empress and the Rain Emperor and used Lightning Flash. In an instant, they had already arrived at a boundless distance. However, he had not even had the time to catch his breath when he saw that person actually swiftly catch up to them. His speed was not much inferior to Ling Han's. Furthermore, the other party's relaxed appearance was definitely not like Ling Han's, who could only burst out in a short period of time. "Don't be nervous. I have come under the orders of the young palace master," that person said. The aura of primal chaos on his body dispersed, revealing his true appearance. This was a woman, and she looked to be in her 30s. Her appearance definitely could not be considered beautiful, and could not even be considered mediocre. In fact, she was a little ugly. Ling Han was startled, and subconsciously said, "Hu Niao." The young palace master has been conferred the name of Tian Yin, that woman said solemnly, her expression respectful as if there was currently a powerful figure standing in front of her. Ling Han's expression was strange. He somewhat believed that this woman had been sent by Hu Niao, and the reason was very simple. How could a little vinegar jar possibly send a beautiful woman to see him? Chapter 1640. Ling Han, you've gone too far. The primordial holy king immediately rebuked. Gone too far, your sister. With an angry rebuke, the large black dog appeared. He stood on his hind legs, twisting his behind. His iron underwear was polished to an incredibly smooth state, reflecting light. Yet he did not feel any shame, and walked over in a dignified manner, pointing at the Saint Kings. "Did you hear Grandpa Dog's underling? Hand over the benefits, or none of you can even think about entering the celestial realm. Are you Grandpa Dog's sons or grandsons? You want to bring you into the celestial realm, just because you call me Grandpa Dog? No way." The saints were enraged. The primordial holy king's personality was the most violent, and he immediately struck out at the large black dog. "Save me." The large black dog broke into a run, and had already arrived behind Ling Han. He stretched out a paw and pointed at the primordial holy king. "If you have the guts, fight Grandpa Dog's underling for 300 rounds. 1 round less, and you're Grandpa Dog's grandson." The primordial holy king was so angry that all his black hair fluttered, and he struck out another paw at the large black dog. The target was very clear, and it was not Ling Han. Pung! Ling Han, however, shot out a punch, landing on this large paw and dispersing this attack. "Junior, what do you mean by this?" The primordial holy king's gaze was sinister. At first, he was already very displeased to be talking to a junior like this, but this junior actually dared to bully him now, which made him even more furious. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, 16 old dogs that attacked me, and you are one of them, right? Woof, don't insult Grandpa Dog." The large black dog immediately turned hostile, and with a whoosh, he bit out at Ling Han's behind. The Empress moved. "Pa, the large black dog was instantly sent flying, and was struck so dizzy that he was disoriented. The primordial Holy King's expression changed, but he said, "Junior, what nonsense are you speaking?" Ling Han swept an eye over the saints and said, "I'm actually a very easy person to talk to. On the basis that we are all fellow cultivators of the ancient realm, I don't mind bringing you all into the celestial realm, but you all, some people are really despicable, wanting to steal the fortune that I have. I'm not that stupid, being sold by someone, and still helping that person earn money. The Saint King who attacked me must give me an explanation. Otherwise, don't blame me for going on a killing spree. Blood slaughter forbidden area." It was a blatant threat. All the Saint Kings looked at each other. Some of them came to a sudden realization. It was no wonder that Ling Han had not appeared for so many years. Some of them had ugly expressions. Back then, they had not killed Ling Han with a single strike, and now they had left behind a great disaster. However, no one made a sound. Many of the Saint Kings who had attacked back then still held on to the hope that they would be lucky. Back then, they had changed their appearances, so Ling Han might not necessarily be able to recognize them. The primordial Holy King laughed coldly. "Junior, you no longer have the trump card to kill a Holy King, and you still dare to be arrogant?" He could not help but attack. Naturally, he also knew that his aura had been seen through by Ling Han, so he simply did not hide it anymore. "Brat Han, kill him. There's no need to give me face." The large black dog jumped up again. "Despicable dog. I will definitely kill you today." The primordial Saint King glared angrily at the large black dog, his killing intent soaring. Ling Han humphed and said, "How imposing." The primordial Saint King smirked coldly and said, "Then I will first kill this despicable dog, and then force out all the secrets on your body." "Stop." The blue feather Saint King immediately stepped out to stop him. Ling Han indeed has no obligation to bring us into the celestial realm. That is the great door that leads to eternal life. This kind of kindness can be said to be heavier than a mountain, and it is worth paying any price. Brother Blue Feather, why are you so angry? Come, we have not sparred for a long time, so why don't we spar? Another Saint King spoke up, stopping the Blue Feather Saint King, not giving him the chance to lend a helping hand. Wang, a galaxy appeared, and the primordial Saint King instantly entered his most powerful battle state. The great Tao transformed into a long river that surged around his body, as if he was the heaven and earth. He struck out with a palm, attacking towards Ling Han and the large black dog at the same time. This strike seemed to be mainly aimed at the large black dog, and Ling Han was only a supplementary attack. But in truth, the destructive power was about the same. He did not mind smacking Ling Han to death as well, and then immediately searching his soul to obtain all the secrets of the other. Ling Han's figure moved quickly, and suddenly turned into a bolt of lightning. Without any warning from all the Saint Kings, he had already appeared in front of the primordial Saint King. His fist shot out, and the 9 heavens flame burned on his fist. Pooh! The defense of the primordial Saint King was completely useless, and Ling Han's fist directly sank into his face. Immortal flames surged, and instantly burned his spirit to ashes. A Saint King of a generation, who had cultivated for who knew how many years to obtain the fruit of Tao he had today, had died a miserable death. He had been killed by a single punch, and had no dignity to speak of. Ling Han withdrew his fist. Under the burning of the immortal flames, his fist was not tainted with a single drop of blood. What? A Saint King had actually been killed by a single punch in a head-on confrontation? All the saints were indescribably shocked, and a chill grew in their bodies. Ling Han's power and aura were clearly very normal, but how had he been able to kill a Saint King with a single punch? The most frightening thing is his speed. It is so fast that it has surpassed the level of a Saint King, as if a heavenly tribulation had descended. It is precisely this kind of extreme speed that caused the primordial Saint King to be completely unprepared, and he was directly hit by a single punch. Also, that ball of flames in his hand is also incredibly frightening. It forcibly broke through the defense of the primordial Saint King and killed him with a single blow. Extreme speed coupled with such terrifying offensive power. So what if his cultivation level is not high? Who can block him? When fighting with him, one must constantly maintain a state of full defense, and only then will one be able to block him. That's right. The Saint Kings whispered to each other. Apart from a limited few peak stage Saint Kings, the others were all anxious. Faced with Ling Han's extreme speed, anyone would be hit if they were not careful. The primordial Saint King was a good example. He had not even been able to unleash his full power before he had already been killed. Ling Han skillfully removed the spatial spirit tools and god tools from the primordial Saint King's body and casually stuffed them into his pockets. Spatial god tools could not be stored into spatial spirit tools or spatial god tools, and could not be stored into the Black Tower. So he simply put them all into his pockets. Ling Han turned towards the other Saint Kings. This is the last chance. Those who have made a move against me previously, get the hell out here. I will take responsibility for my own actions. Otherwise, I do not mind going to your lair to kill them all after I have killed you all. Such arrogance. Another few Saint Kings stood out. Though Ling Han's extreme speed was astonishing, and that ball of flames possessed frightening destructive power, he was only a small saint after all. Fuck a medium saint. Only now did they realize that Ling Han had actually advanced into the medium saint tier. This was too inconceivable. 10 years ago, he had just broken through to the small saint tier. And now he had become a medium saint. This kind of advancement speed was too frightening, and also completely unacceptable. Even if you had taken a celestial medicine, it was still impossible for you to advance so quickly. There are more? Ling Han said calmly. A total of 16. Now that one is dead, there should still be 15 shameless old dogs. Woof! The large black dog was displeased and barked at Ling Han. As his words fell, another 10 Saint Kings walked out, and added with the few Saint Kings from before, there were exactly 15 people. Chapter 1641. The gazes of these 15 Saint Kings were cold. In their eyes, as long as Ling Han did not have the trump card to kill Saint Kings, then it was impossible for him to cause them any fear. The present Ling Han was indeed very strong, but he was only relying on his extreme speed and the might of flames. His own battle prowess was only that much, and was not enough to be feared. Since they had already shed all pretense of cordiality, then they would fight. 15 seniors that have attained Dao for many years bullying a junior. Do you all still have any shame? The Blue Feather Saint King stood out, and stood shoulder to shoulder with Ling Han. I am also very unconvinced. Another Saint King stood out, and chose to support Ling Han. Finally, there were a total of 9 Saint Kings that chose to stand with Ling Han, and another 7 Saint Kings chose not to help either side. Fellow Taoists, why waste time on a junior? An opposing Saint King said, trying to drive a wedge between them. This boy must be hiding a colossal secret. As long as we capture him, with our abilities, we will definitely be able to completely grasp it in a few million years at most. With our remaining lifespan, living for another few 100 million years would not be a problem. Why not take this kind of fateful opportunity for ourselves, and break into the celestial realm ourselves? Don't say you all have never thought about it. This boy must have obtained the secret technique of a celestial king that had fallen in the past. Otherwise, how could he possibly have such a powerful celestial king technique? Fellow Taoists, are you all going to just watch as a colossal fortune slips away, right in front of your eyes? The Blue Feather Saint King humphed, and said, You have already cultivated to the level of Saint King. So why do you not have the slightest bit of backbone? Speaking shamelessly in such a righteous and confident manner, you all really have enough face. Humph. What's the point of spouting so much nonsense when we can't even see eye to eye? A Saint King was more fiery. Pick out 9 people, and stand against those 9. The remaining ones will join forces to kill that brat, and there will naturally be no problem then. That's right. The opposing Saint Kings nodded one after another, and very soon, 9 people were separated, and they all targeted the Blue Feather Saint King and the other 8 people, while the remaining 6 Saint Kings targeted Ling Han. The Open Clouds King was also among them. He was the first to make a move. Boom! the power of time circulated, causing others to have the misconception that he had come from the future or the past. It was incredibly bizarre. Ling Han's body moved, but he had only taken a single step when he discovered that he seemed to have entered a swamp. His speed had actually dropped by quite a few times. Although he was still slightly faster than a Saint King, his advantage was no longer obvious. Ho ho, you've already used a technique in front of us once. Could it be that you want to use it a second time? The Open Clouds King smirked coldly. It was he who had used the power of time to slow down the flow of time around Ling Han's body, causing his speed to also slow down. He was slightly perspiring. Ling Han's strength had soared to the level of an early-stage Saint King. Even if he was a peak-stage Saint King, it was still rather strenuous for him to want to restrain Ling Han's speed. This could not be sustained for too long. Kill! All the Saint Kings attacked one after another. 9 saints against 9 saints, while the remaining Saint Kings attacked Ling Han at the same time. They wanted to kill him while his speed was being suppressed. Ling Han smirked coldly. Wang, the killing formation was activated. Xiao xiao xiao. A frightening light shot out from his body, and instantly shattered the flow of time. All techniques in the world had to abide by an iron law, and that was that when one's power reached a certain level, techniques would lose their meaning. In front of Ling Han's killing formation, even the Open Clouds King's power of time was unable to exert its might. Damn it! The Open Clouds King cursed. Actually, his battle prowess was not the slightest bit weaker than Ling Han's. But if he wanted to trap Ling Han from a long distance away, the consumption of energy would be too great. But if he had to fight Ling Han at close quarters, he did not dare to take such a risk. What if he was killed? If he had that kind of bold personality, why would he have needed to hide in the Forbidden Land all these years? And why would he need to establish the Forbidden Land in such a distant place? Ling Han broke free, and immediately channeled the immovable deity metal body mystical power, forming another 4 arms. At the same time, he channeled a celestial technique, and charged towards the Open Clouds King. The first person he wanted to kill was this person. Firstly, this was to complete his agreement with the Heavenly River King. And secondly, this person posed a considerably great threat to him. After all, time was one of the strongest regulations in the world, and could even suppress his extreme speed. Don't even think about it. The other 5 Saint Kings were not to be trifled with, either. They each used their ultimate techniques, and blasted towards Ling Han. Ling Han gave a battle cry, and shot into the skies, taking the initiative to change the battlefield. Otherwise, if he fought to his heart's content here, Wood Figure Planet would definitely be destroyed. Kill! The 6 Saint Kings all gave chase, one attack after another blasting out, triggering Great Tao. The light of regulations danced wildly. Saint Kings were the strongest beings in the immortal realm, and each attack could trigger the resonance of the heaven and earth. Ling Han had no more misgivings, and turned back to charge towards the 6 Saint Kings. Various celestial techniques were unleashed from his hands, causing all the saints to be stunned. How could a single person unleash so many celestial techniques at the same time? But the most frightening were still those 2 swords, which were channeled with the lightning sword technique. There were too many celestial techniques fused within, and it could cleave the heavens. But Ling Han's own battle prowess was only in the early stage of the Saint King tier, and he could only match a peak stage Saint King when the killing formation activated. This was not a power that truly belonged to him, so it was inevitable that he could not use it as he wished, especially in a battle of this level. He immediately discovered that a killing formation was only a killing formation, after all, and there was still a very great difference between it and his own battle prowess. For a moment, the battle was in a stalemate, but all the Saint Kings were already so shocked that their scalps were numb. This was Ling Han's actual battle prowess. It was not like using his trump cards, and there was a time limit, but he could fight on endlessly like this. To make a Saint King fight, until he was completely exhausted, no matter how intense it was completely no problem for it to last for a few hundred years. And that was a few hundred years' time. Even if Ling Han could not defeat them in the end, could it be that he would not be able to find a chance to escape? It was over. The rise of this young saint could no longer be stopped. He was already so powerful now, and in a few more years, the whole ancient realm would have to regard him as the supreme ruler. Kill. These saint kings all had icy expressions. This was their last chance. If they could not kill Ling Han this time, then they would not have another chance in the future. In the galaxy, a bloody battle was raging. On one hand, Ling Han wanted to kill these saint kings that harbored ill intentions against him. And on the other hand, these saint kings also wanted to kill him, so that they would be able to eliminate any future troubles, and also obtain a great harvest. Neither side was willing to back down. Various celestial techniques were activated, illuminating the galaxy. Even those that were separated by a few galaxies would be able to see that dazzling light. Waves that caused one's heart to palpitate were strong enough to travel in the galaxy for tens of thousands of years before their power was completely exhausted. Ling Han was bathed in blood and riddled with wounds. He was facing 6 saint kings. Though only 2 of them had reached the peak stage, the alliance of the 6 saint kings was still a very great danger to him. Taking a single move was enough to make him bleed. Even his physique that was close to level 20 godly metal did not have too good of a defensive effect. But the 6 saint kings were not any better off. 2 early-stage saint kings had an arm and a leg torn off by him, and a middle-stage saint king's chest had been punched through by him. A late-stage saint king's lower abdomen had been pierced by him with a broken wooden sword, and was forced to give up on the lower half of his body. Otherwise, both his body and spirit would be destroyed. Chapter 1642. 6 against 1. And 2 of them were peak stage saint kings. They finally had the upper hand, and on the 10th day of the battle, Ling Han's injuries were so severe that he could no longer fight. Die! The 6 saint kings all wore cold expressions. Even with their abilities, they would need to spend 10 days to be able to force Ling Han into a desperate situation. If they allowed this brat to escape this calamity, then they would definitely not have another chance in future. I'm going to disappoint you, Ling Han said coldly. He circulated a drop of indestructible true fluid, and all the injuries on his body disappeared. He instantly reached his peak condition. The 6 saint kings almost went crazy. They had finally forced Ling Han into a desperate situation, but in the blink of an eye, he was full of vigor again. He must have used a secret technique to forcefully heal his injuries. This is either a temporary suppression, or he has to pay a huge price. He definitely can't use it again and again. That's right. Since we could force him into a desperate situation once, we can do it a second time. Let's work harder. The 6 saint kings' eyes gleamed coldly. Having reached such a high level, they naturally didn't lack tenacity and patience. They immediately suppressed their palpitations, and once again launched their encirclement. Ling Han exchanged injuries with these people, and after another intense battle for 10 days, his injuries were once again extremely severe. However, the 6 saint kings were also in a terrible state. Ling Han's extreme speed created a huge problem for them. Die! The 6 saint kings said coldly. They had once again forced Ling Han into a desperate situation. This time, Ling Han definitely wouldn't be able to turn the tables again. However, Ling Han circulated another drop of indestructible true fluid, and his injuries were completely healed once again. With a buffer of 10 days, it was enough for the indestructible true fluid to be extremely effective again. The problem now was the amount of indestructible true fluid. There were only 10 drops in total, and they would be gone once they were used up. The 6 saint kings couldn't help but be terrified. How is this possible again? Such a great healing technique definitely could only be used once. Otherwise, wouldn't he have an undying body? They didn't dare to gamble anymore. Perhaps Ling Han wouldn't be able to continue next time. But the key was that they were all heavily injured. Perhaps before they could kill Ling Han, they would be finished off first. The secrets on Ling Han were what they wanted, but none of them were willing to exchange their lives for the beauty of others. This was the last thing they would do. Retreat. It was unknown which Saint King was the first to turn around, but the 6 Saint Kings actually split up and left almost at the same time. Ling Han did not hesitate in the slightest. He set his sights on the open clouds king and chased after him. Even if he possessed extreme speed, killing a Saint King would still require a great deal of effort. Thus, he could definitely only target one of them, and there was naturally no need to think too much. It had to be the open clouds king. Damn it! The open clouds king could not help but rebuke angrily. This Ling Han did not chase after anyone else, but had set his sights on him. Was this not clearly showing that he was easy to bully? He was a peak stage Saint King, facing an opponent who possessed extreme speed and incredibly frightening destructive power. Blindly fleeing was definitely not the best plan. He could catch up to him at any time and kill him with a single blow. The open clouds king turned around and faced Ling Han head-on. Meanwhile, his feet slid, and he continued to retreat. With his strength, there was actually no difference whether he walked straight or in the opposite direction. His speed was not the slightest bit slow. Ling Han used lightning flash and instantly closed in on him. The open clouds king channeled the power of time. Wang. The flow of time around him immediately became strange. There was the past, the present, and the future. Even if a great saint entered this area, they would be instantly torn to shreds. Ling Han charged in, and his skin immediately became bright red. The power of time was tearing at his body. If it were not for the fact that his physique was incredibly tough, he would definitely have already been torn to shreds at this moment. He channeled the power of lightning. Z. Exterminating lightning surged, resisting the power of time. Theoretically, the power of time belonged to one of the strongest regulations, but aside from the regulations themselves, the depth of one's grasp over the regulations was also important. How could a celestial king that grasped the regulations of would be inferior to a saint that grasped the power of time? The open clouds king's power of time originated from his bloodline inheritance. It was both limited by the purity of his bloodline and his own cultivation level. Now that his cultivation level had reached the peak stage of Saint King, he was already the strongest in the immortal realm. Thus, this power of time was mainly affected by his bloodline. Yet Ling Han was different. His exterminating lightning originated from heavenly tribulation fluid and was the strongest existence in this realm. Thus, it was not the slightest bit weaker than the open clouds king's power of time. Lightning mainly dealt with killing and punishment. As Ling Han forcefully charged in, the power of time was shattered, but his speed was also restricted, and he was no longer unfathomable. Darkness of the paramount night. Ling Han unleashed another celestial technique. Endless darkness spread out and enveloped the open clouds king within. You want to deceive me with a mere illusion technique? The open clouds king smirked coldly. He waved his large hand, wanting to dispel the darkness. But he immediately discovered that this darkness was incredibly dense. After dispelling a portion, new darkness immediately filled in. 9 Meridians celestial sword, he roared in his mind, and drew out a divine sword. There was a flash of celestial light, and with a slash, the darkness was forcibly sliced apart. This was a portion of the Celestial King technique that he had obtained from the Heavenly River King, but he had never dared to use it in front of others, unless he could silence them. That was because he was afraid that other forbidden lands would discover this great secret. But there was no one else here now, and he himself had encountered a great danger, so he naturally used it without any regard for anything else. As the divine sword slashed, celestial light appeared. Ling Han drew out the broken wooden sword. In a direct confrontation with the saint weapon, the divine demon sword was only level 17, after all. He did not want it to be damaged. Wang, the broken wooden sword slashed out, and the lightning sword technique was channeled. There was Tide of the Ages, and there was exterminating lightning. The open clouds king wanted nothing more than to immediately refine Ling Han. The latter had fragments of time on him that could increase his grasp of the regulations of time. But the problem was, even the combined power of 6 Saint Kings could not take down Ling Han just now. Could it be that he would succeed if he used a Celestial King technique? A Celestial King technique was indeed powerful, but firstly, he had only obtained a portion, and secondly, he was limited by his cultivation level, so the might that he could unleash was limited. The two of them battled, and Ling Han only had to face one Saint King, so he naturally let loose. With a battle cry, he fully unleashed his battle prowess, pouring out attacks that were like raging waves. The Open Clouds King did not show weakness, and fought hard against Ling Han. The battle prowess of the two of them was about the same, so neither of them had an overwhelming advantage, which naturally made the battle incredibly drawn out. It was difficult for a Saint King to kill a Saint King. Previously, the 6 Saint Kings had needed 10 days' time to force Ling Han into desperate straits, and now that they were fighting one-on-one, it was naturally even more difficult. Ling Han traded injury for injury. His trump cards were all inclined towards defense. The indestructible true fluid could instantly heal his wounds, and rebirth from the ashes could allow him to start over after dying. He was going to slowly grind the Open Clouds King to death. There was nothing that could be done. Without overwhelming strength, he could only do this. Peak stage Saint Kings were the strongest beings in the whole immortal realm. Which one of them was not a prodigy? It would be abnormal if they were easy to kill. Chapter 1644. The Open Clouds King shook his trident, and was about to launch an attack, yet his expression suddenly changed drastically. His hand trembled, and he almost lost his grip on his god tool. He was already at the end of his rope, and was about to die. With the severity of his injuries, it was originally impossible for him to rush back here. But his will to live was too frightening. He burned his blood, burned his life force, and forcefully dragged himself to this state. But his injuries would not disappear because of this. On the contrary, because even his life force had been completely burned, how was he supposed to live? His physical body was obviously unbelievably withered, and his spirit was also old, like a candle in the wind that could be extinguished at any time. He was about to die. The Open Clouds King was shocked. If he was not currently like a skeleton, his face would definitely have paled by now. No. The Open Clouds King was someone who was extremely afraid of death, and his desire to live was stronger than anyone else's. Otherwise, he would not have been able to run back. Even in this kind of desperate situation, he had absolutely no intention of giving up. His eye sockets that no longer had eyeballs swept over everyone in the Forbidden Land. A thought involuntarily flashed in his eye sockets, and terrifying flames suddenly leaped out. Ancestor, you can do it! Ancestor is mighty, kill that guy! Ancestor is invincible! The members of the Zhong clan all shouted loudly, cheering on the Open Clouds King. In their hearts, their ancestor was the symbol of invincibility, and this was the Open Clouds' Forbidden Land. With the help of formations and god tools, they were naturally invincible. The Open Clouds King suddenly sucked in a breath, and turned into a gust of wind. As this gust of wind blew past, it formed a powerful suction force. The members of the Zhong clan were still shouting, yet they suddenly felt an intense pain in their bodies, and shockingly discovered that the flesh and blood on their bodies were currently being stripped away. How could it be like this? The suction force of the gust of wind was too strong, and the members of the Zhong clan could not resist it at all. Their flesh and blood were instantly separated from their skeletons, and swept up by the wind. They flew in the air, and actually turned into a bronze dragon. Some clansmen had not advanced into immortal level, and their souls could not leave their physical bodies. Their skeletons instantly fell to the ground, and they died instantly. Those who had advanced into immortal level could still persevere, and the power of their spirit forcibly stabilized their skeletons. As long as their life force was not destroyed, they could still regrow their flesh and blood, but they immediately fell into despair. The hurricane came back, and this time, it was targeting their divine souls, who there was no way to resist at all. Everyone's spirit was drawn out and swept into the sky by the hurricane. Even the few saints were unable to escape. In front of a peak Saint King, who was even an elite who wielded a top-grade Saint tool, and controlled a top-grade formation, all resistance was futile. Why? Patriarch, why? These clansmen all used their souls to shout out. They were unwilling. Why did the old ancestor act like he had lost his mind, and attacked them? The Open Clouds King was unmoved. In the sky, the blood and spirit of the members of the Zhong clan blended together, turning into a colossal bronze dragon. Every member of the Zhong clan had a certain amount of the time dragon bloodline. With so much blood essence and spirit interweaving together, this unique scene was formed. He opened his mouth and inhaled. Instantly, the bronze dragon flew toward him and entered his body. Instantly, his body was like a barren land that had been nourished. It immediately became plump. Visible to the naked eye, flesh and blood appeared on his skeleton-like body, but he had not completely recovered to his normal state. He only looked slightly more like a human than before. He had no other choice. His own blood essence and life force had been completely exhausted, and only clansmen of the same origin could save him. But his cultivation level was too high. Even if he exterminated the members of his clan, it would only allow him to recover a tiny bit, and he could be considered to have escaped the brink of death. Die! He roared, and brandished his trident to attack Ling Han. Meanwhile, the bronze dragon beneath his feet let out a dragon's cry, and blasted out the power of time. He hated Ling Han. All of this was because of this villain in front of him. Otherwise, how could he possibly have been forced to swallow the blood essence and spirit of his clansmen? But he did not regret it in the slightest. As long as he was alive, the Zhong clan could be rebuilt, and they could regain their former glory. On the contrary, if he died, then the Zhong clan would really be finished. You're worse than a beast. Ling Han's expression was cold. This person was actually deranged enough to make a move on his own clansmen. He practically could not be called human. Though he was enemies with the Open Cloud's king, he had never thought of slaughtering the entire Open Cloud's forbidden land. At most, he would plunder everything here, and then disband. But for the sake of his own survival, the Open Cloud's king actually did not hesitate to make a move on his own descendants, and devour their blood, flesh, and spirit to prolong his life. This caused him to despise him greatly. It's all because of you. The Open Cloud's king roared loudly, and attacked endlessly. Now that he had the aid of a top-grade Saint tool in formation, his battle prowess should have been even stronger. But unfortunately, his body was too weak. Though he had recovered a little by swallowing his clansmen, he had only escaped the brink of death, and was far from reaching his peak condition. One was strong, and the other was weak. His battle prowess was only equal to before. What did Ling Han have to fear? He used all his celestial techniques, and his head of black hair danced wildly. There were flames interweaving. That was because he was too furious, and could not help but want to slaughter this beast in front of him. The Open Cloud's king resisted with all his might, but his body was too weak. How could he withstand this kind of great battle? They had only exchanged a few thousand blows, and his condition began to decline, and he once again descended into a state of despair. This time, there were no more clansmen for him to swallow. Rest in peace on the road to the netherworld. When you are with your clansmen, what face do you have to face them? Ling Han charged, his two swords slashing out. One sword sliced towards the Open Cloud's king's neck, and the other pierced towards the Open Cloud's king's chest. What ability did the Open Cloud's king have to resist? Pooh! His head suddenly shot into the skies, and a sword pierced through his chest, and came out from his back. No blood flowed out. It had long since been turned into battle prowess by him. So how could he possibly squeeze out the slightest bit? The Heavenly River King was unwilling to accept this. His spirit left his body, and still wanted to make one last struggle, but Ling Han followed up with a sword strike. The murderous aura of the divine demon sword swept past, and the Open Cloud's king's spirit was also split into two. This was definitely a fatal blow. The two halves of his spirit still wanted to reunite, and release a cry that sounded like a wolf's howl. But no matter what, they could not do so. Why do you have to target me? He released a roar of unwillingness. Previously, he was not the only Saint King that had made a move against Ling Han. So why did Ling Han insist on hunting him down? Furthermore, it had been a whole 4 years. If it had been any other Saint King, they would have already given up, right? It is merely karma, Ling Han said coldly. I have obtained the inheritance of the Heavenly River King, and promised him that I would send you on your way. What? The Open Cloud's king's spirit was greatly shocked, and suddenly stopped struggling. So that was how it was. He smiled bitterly. This was really reaping what he had sown. He had betrayed the Heavenly River King all those years ago, And in the blink of an eye, a few 100 million years had passed, and he had finally received his retribution. Ha 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 ha. His spirit laughed loudly, yet was rapidly disintegrating, and very quickly turned into nothingness, returning to the heaven and earth. A saint king of a generation had fallen. The moment the open clouds king died, that trident immediately dropped down from the skies, and the formation lost its host, also stopped operating. Ling Han withdrew his mystical power, and his eyes swept over the surroundings. He couldn't help but sigh softly. Below, corpses were strewn all over the ground. There was clearly not the slightest scent of blood, yet it exuded a strong sense of misery. Chapter 1645. If the Open Clouds King had not betrayed the Heavenly River King at that time, the Open Clouds King should have already entered into the celestial realm, and perhaps he would have become a severing mundane ancestor already. But now, he still hadn't been able to truly obtain a celestial king technique, nor had he become a celestial. Moreover, his bloodline had been completely wiped out, so it could be said that evil had its retribution. Ling Han shook his head. He searched around the forbidden grounds, and found some godly metal, as well as a stock of saintly medicine. He naturally accepted them unceremoniously, and then sat down cross-legged. He had fought continuously for 4 years, so his body was naturally extremely fatigued. Even a sage would need to recuperate after fighting for 4 years. Ling Han immediately discovered that when his body had recovered to its optimal state, the surging of origin power did not stop. Instead, it continued to circulate within his body. One after another, heavenly bodies appeared in his dantian, at an extremely fast speed. His elemental energy was accumulating at an extremely fast rate. Ling Han couldn't help but be overjoyed. This was truly out of his expectations. He didn't expect that after such a long and drawn-out battle, his battle prowess would actually receive such a huge boost. Of course, he wouldn't let this opportunity slip by. He hurriedly comprehended under the reincarnation tree, allowing his origin power and comprehension to soar at the same time. After half a month, he finally stopped, and the number of stars in his dantian had reached 50 million. 50 million, the limit of the intermediate saint stage, was 100 million stars. This meant he was already halfway there, and had completely cultivated the intermediate saint stage. He only needed to consolidate one more star, and he would be able to step into the mastery intermediate saint stage. Cool, should I find a few more saint kings to chase after him? Ling Han thought for a moment, and couldn't help but shake his head. Firstly, if it weren't for the Open Clouds King, it would be very difficult for him to have the resolve to kill the other party so urgently. At worst, he could just wait for a period of time, and it wouldn't be too late to kill him after he became a great saint. Secondly, only a freak like the Open Clouds King would flee for his life like this for as long as 4 years. Otherwise, if it had been any other saint king with a bit more backbone, they would have long since risked their lives. At worst, they would just die. This was no longer as simple as a good opponent, but an abnormal one. He stood up, preparing to return to Woodfigure Planet. Though the majority of them were in the Black Tower, the Empress and the Rain Emperor were still there. Naturally, it would take about 4 years for him to return. As Ling Han hurried along, he did not forget to take pills and cultivate. At his current level, as long as he was not in a state of battle, he could cultivate at any time. It was just that the medicine he took was naturally not of the saint grade, so its effects were quite limited. But no matter how small a mosquito's leg was, it was still meat. He traveled alone in the universe for 4 years, and finally returned to Jupiter's star. 8 years had passed since the last Great Sage War. All the hostile Sage Kings had left Woodfigure Planet. What they had to worry about now was Ling Han's revenge. As long as Ling Han stepped into the Great Sage realm, there was absolutely no one in the entire Divine Realm who could rival him. He reckoned that these forbidden lands had all moved away. Ling Han was not in a hurry to seek revenge on them. The battle with the Open Clouds King had let him know that it was really too difficult for him to kill a Saint King with his present strength. It was better for him to cultivate diligently and increase his strength. Then, he would be able to suppress a Saint King with a flip of his hand in future. He was slightly curious. He had already returned to Woodfigure Planet. So why had not a single person come out to welcome him? Sweeping out with his divine sense, he discovered that there was actually not a single saint-level being here. Could it be that those hostile Sage Kings had returned, and the Empress, the Star Sand Saint, and the others had all been forced to flee? Ling Han called over a student, and only after asking did he find out that an ancient site had appeared a few years ago, attracting the Empress and even the Star Sand Saint to explore it, and had yet to return even now. This ancient site had never appeared before, and no one had any specific information about it. That student could not give any details at all. Ling Han had everyone in the Black Tower come out. Though the effects of cultivating under the reincarnation tree were the best, they could not always stay there. He decided to go to that ancient site. The Empress and the others had left 5 years ago, and had not returned until now. Perhaps they had encountered some kind of danger, so he naturally could not sit still. He, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and the Notionless Saint set off. The others had not advanced into the saint level, so there was no meaning in going. That ancient site was not far from Woodfigure Planet, and was only separated by a galaxy. If they traveled by starship, they would need 1 or 2 months' time. But under the feet of a saint, it would only take half a day. The three of them very quickly arrived at that galaxy. They saw that a mountain range had suddenly appeared in the initially empty galaxy, floating in the galaxy just like that. However, this mountain range also seemed to be enveloped in a layer of fog, incredibly hazy, as if it did not exist in this world. Because this was a small world, they could not directly barge in, and had to pass through a special door. There was no need to search carefully for this, because there were not only the three of them here. They saw that in the area ahead, there was a large number of starships parked, as if they had formed a galactic fortress. The three of them restrained their aura, and walked over with a single step. Otherwise, a saintly might would pervade the air, and not a single person would be able to remain standing here. Ling Han did not like others kneeling in front of him. He did not need this kind of vanity at all. There was a door here, and a path that led to a small world appeared. It was clear, unlike that mountain range, which seemed to be shrouded in clouds and fog. Yo, this girl is quite pretty. Someone whistled at the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. The opening of this ancient site had attracted innumerable forces, not only saint-level forces, but the majority were actually Eternal River tier forces. This was the broader level of forces in the immortal realm. When there were so many people, it was inevitable that there would be good and bad people intermingled, and there were all kinds of people. That was a young man, and his strength was at the Sun-Moon tier. Relatively speaking, his talent was considerably extraordinary. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden turned around and glared at him. Her frightening aura became tangible, and pung! That person was instantly sent flying, blood spurting madly from his mouth. He only stopped after spitting out over a dozen mouthfuls of blood. His face was already deathly pale, and his whole body was covered with cold sweat. He did not even dare to say a word. Once he got to his feet, he hurriedly turned around and fled. Ling Han naturally would not take it to heart. He observed this ancient site, and sensed the aura exuding from the entrance of the passageway. He first had to have an intuitive understanding. This kind of place could actually cause a saint to spend 5 years, and still not be able to come out. Was it too big? Or was there a precious treasure that was tightly hidden, and more time was needed to search for it? Or was there a bloody battle for the sake of obtaining the treasure, and the victor had not been decided all along? Let's go. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden tugged on Ling Han. Ling Han nodded. Since he did not understand, then he would go in. His wife and elder brother were all inside, and if he did not go in, he would not be able to rest easy. Senior brother Ling. A call filled with pleasant surprise was heard. Long Xiangyue leaped over, a smile rising on her pretty face, her exquisite beauty capable of toppling cities. Ling Han paused slightly, smiled, and asked, "Why are you here?" "I accompanied Auntie out to relax, and just happened to hear that an ancient site has opened here. So I came with Auntie," she said hurriedly as she beckoned behind her. True enough, Long Yushan was standing there. At first, Long Yushan did not want to see Ling Han, but having been exposed by her niece like this, she could only walk over. When she saw Ling Han, she couldn't help but be extremely shocked and blurted out, "You've actually advanced into the saint tier." This sentence was spoken very softly and quickly. Probably no one other than herself had heard it clearly. This was too inconceivable. Over a dozen years ago, Ling Han was only in the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier. And now, he had already become a saint. Chapter 1646. Even though the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier was only one step away from the Genesis tier, as someone who had been there, Long Yushan clearly knew how difficult it was to cross this step. She could be considered a prodigy. Not only was her natural talent astonishing, her ancestral blood was also thick. But even so, she had still spent a whole 2 million years to advance from the consummate level of the Eternal River tier to the Genesis tier. More than a dozen years. She could no longer see through Ling Han. Not only could she not see through his cultivation level, she could not even see through his age. She only knew that he was exceptionally young, and that vigorous vitality that was like a great furnace could practically kill most elites in the world. She was not afraid of not knowing, but only afraid of comparing. In front of Ling Han, who would dare call themselves a prodigy, her eyes drifted and landed on the heavenly phoenix divine maiden and the notionless saint, and she couldn't help but feel even more shocked. Another two saints. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was also incredibly young, while the notionless saint, though his vitality was very vigorous, had an ancient feeling to his soul. He should have taken over someone else's body and been reborn, so the age of his body and spirit did not match the set. Fellow cultivators, Long Yushan did not dare to be careless, and clasped her hands in greeting to Ling Han and the others. Though she had seen Ling Han kill a saint previously, and could not treat him as an Eternal River tier at all, saints naturally had the pride of saints. For example, it was only after Ling Han had become a small saint that the Saint Kings of the Forbidden Lands finally addressed him as fellow cultivator, acknowledging his identity and status. Notionless Saint and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden both returned the greeting. Seeing that Ling Han seemed to be very polite to her, they were naturally filled with goodwill. Long Xiangyue, however, was dumbfounded. Why did Auntie address these three people as fellow cultivators? Could it be? She dared not believe it, and exclaimed in shock, "Ling Han, you've broken through to the saint tier." Pooh! Those in the surroundings heard her exclamation, and instantly spluttered with laughter. This little girl was really ignorant. She must have popped out from some remote corner, actually saying that young man was a saint. How hilarious! There were only a few saints in the whole immortal realm. Furthermore, which saint did not have white beards and eyebrows? If they did not cultivate until they looked like they were about to die, how could they possibly become saints? This was the impression most people had of saints. They were either old men or old women. How could you become a saint if you were not old? Ling Han, on the other hand, was shockingly young. His cultivation was not worn, but his vitality was vigorous, and he did not look old at all. Yes, Ling Han nodded. With his current strength, he no longer feared anyone in the ancient realm. That's great, Long Xiangyue said while clapping her hands. Her heart was filled with pride. The man she had slept with was naturally extraordinary like this. Young lady, don't be deceived, someone said, reminding her. Recently, there have been a lot of scammers, either claiming to be experts, or the descendants of some great power. But in reality, they are just nameless nobodies, specializing in swindling money and women. Long Xiangyue was furious. He actually said that Ling Han was a swindler of money and sex. Bah! She also wanted to be swindled by Ling Han, but he didn't want her at all. She wasn't an unreasonable person. Since the others were reminding her out of goodwill, she didn't flare up. She pretended that she didn't hear them and ignored them. Ling Han, you're so amazing. She looked at Ling Han, her eyes shining, as if stars were about to come out. Silly girl. The person who had warned her earlier couldn't help but shake his head. TSK, such a beautiful girl had actually foolishly been sold by someone, and still had to pay for that person. Oh, a saint? Why don't you let me experience it for myself? A young man strode out, his expression proud, and raised an eyebrow at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, Long Xiangyue and Long Yushan. The meaning was clear. Big brother is the one you need to look up to. That's the Yang clan's 7th young master, right? That's right, Yang Ming. It's said that he reached the consummate level of the heavenly body tier 3,000 years ago, and originally had the chance to enter the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy. However, a great accident happened in the Yang clan, and that's why he missed the chance to go to the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy. Otherwise, with Yang Qi's talent, he would definitely be qualified to become a disciple of the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy. Gasp, a disciple of the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy. Doesn't that mean that he's qualified to become a saint? Of course. The disciples of the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy all have the potential to become saints. The passers-by all discussed in low voices. There was definitely someone who recognized that young man and had called out his identity. He was very prominent. There was a common understanding among the several hundred galaxies in the vicinity, and that was that whoever could enter into the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy would definitely be a genius among geniuses. In future, even if he could not become a saint, advancing into the Eternal River tier was a sure thing. Was that not awesome enough? There were only a few saints in the whole immortal realm, and on average, there was only one in each galaxy. Below saints was the Eternal River tier. In future, Yang Ming would be second only to one person, and above millions and millions of people, which was enough to make others die of envy. Yang Ming. There were already a few girls screaming, as if they were infatuated, waving their hands, wanting nothing more than to immediately throw themselves into his arms. Yang Ming stood proudly, wanting nothing more than to raise his nose in the air. See, this was what it meant to be a young elite, the bearing of a king tier. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. With his present strength and status, he really had no interest in lowering himself to the level of this kind of junior. He only said to Long Yushan, "Let's go in together." Sure. Long Xiangyue hurriedly agreed, as if afraid that Long Yushan would object. Long Yushan couldn't help but sigh internally. She could naturally tell what her niece was thinking, but Ling Han did not look like he had been moved in the slightest. This was destined to be a one-sided love. He had to find an opportunity to have a good talk with Long Xiangyue. He couldn't let her continue to sink like this. Go! They set off and were about to enter the ruins. Yang Ming couldn't help but jump in anger. He immediately took a step forward and reached out to grab Ling Han's shoulder. "Saint, let's spar." Ling Han slightly released the aura of a saint. Pa! Yang Ming immediately sat down on the ground, cold sweat rolling down his forehead. He felt as if he had just passed by the gates of hell, and his body trembled violently. "This is a saint," he said in a trembling voice. This was definitely the aura of a saint, because he had already reached the peak stage of the heavenly body tier. Even an Eternal River tier could not possibly frighten him to this extent with just a wisp of aura. Many people in the surroundings choked on their saliva. Then they were dumbfounded like dead fish. Sage is what a saint? How is that possible? But how could it be that Yang Ming would spout nonsense? He was a young king tier in the consummate level of the heavenly body tier. If he spouted nonsense, would he still have the face to see others in future? How could there be such a young saint? Yang Ming couldn't help but kneel down and bow respectfully to Ling Han. He actually dared to have ideas about the woman of a saint. It was extremely kind of him not to slap him to death. Greetings, saint." He prostrated himself on the ground and expressed his repentance in the most humble manner. Ling Han did not intend to lower himself to his level, so he casually waved his hand. Only then did Yang Ming dare to stand up. He was full of gratitude towards Ling Han. He didn't expect there to be such an easygoing saint. "Stop!" Ling Han and the others were about to set off again, yet they heard a stern shout. They saw that the young man who had fled in a sorry state earlier had already returned. There was a middle-aged man beside him, and he possessed the cultivation level of the heavenly body tier. He was releasing his aura without restraint, appearing to be very arrogant. "You even dare to touch someone from my Tong family? Are you tired of living?" shouted the middle-aged man. that you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.